6 p.m.
Indeed, welcome to the show from Johannesburg to Jeffreys Bay, wherever you may be in South Africa and all around the world. My name is Ashraf Garda on this World Radio Day, and I've certainly heard Bridget, as well as most other presenters, hosts, talking about World Radio Day. So why should I not do the same thing? I think I need to, but I will say this much, right? Because I think it's important as a comment, as opposed to like, what do we celebrate? For me, I think radio allows a one-on-one relationship that the TV does not give you. Newspapers do not give it to you, because it's the ultimate habit listening wherever you may be. So you'll find yourself in many cases ending up doing the same things every day, governed by the radio host. So over a period of time, you develop this unique relationship with the host, and I develop this unique relationship with you. And I think it's that level of one-on-one intimacy, intellectual intimacy, that is the big strength of radio. And in that case, long may radio thrive. It also has this wonderful ability of getting into places that other mediums can't really go. So it'll get you wherever you need to be. That's what radio does. World Radio Day. I'll tell you what, after 4 o'clock, I'll tell you my quick story about how I got into radio. Not now, after 4 o'clock. But first things first, let's get into one of the biggest issues that we must talk about as to what's happening with the MK party. We had this conversation the other day about stories between Floyd Shivambu and Jacob Zuma's daughter, and I say that specifically because the fact that she's her daughter is the issue. Otherwise, she's just another person. And then we now hear about another story between Dr. John Slaughter as well as Mzwamini Manye, right? I'm saying Jimmy Manye. That was his former name, as he called himself, right? So let's then talk about that in terms of, because Samkele Maseko from the SABC News, he's got a story in terms of what has actually happened between two senior influential figures within the MK party. Samkele, I appreciate you giving off your time. Thanks for joining us.
A very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Thank you. Right. So we'll maybe talk about other things too, but let's start with this one. This so-called spat, John Slaughter and Mzwamini Manye. True, false? Has it happened?
It is true. There is tensions between Mzwanele Manye, the chief whip of the MK party, and the caucus leader, Dr. John Slaughter, particularly which emanates from that poor, crafted SONA debate speech that John Slaughter delivered at the debate of the SONA, which was delivered by President Ramaphosa. It is alleged that John Slaughter had written his own speech, but Mzwanele Manye, as the chief whip, then came with a already drafted and crafted speech and said that it was from the highest office within the party, which then subsequently John Slaughter had to deliver, but the speech was below par. It spoke more about former President Jacob Zuma's era in office and very little about the current administration under President Ramaphosa, its deficiencies, its failures, its successes. It spoke nothing about the current administration and the current socio-economic conditions that many South Africans are facing, to be quite honest and brutal. It was below par speech. It was substandard, and that is what has irked many members of the MKP, and in particular the caucus of the MKP, saying that John Slaughter is subsequently being sabotaged by Mzwanele Manye, who is the chief whip of the party. And it is alluded also and alleged that the speech was also coming through from the Secretary General of the party, which basically says and shows the clear divisions that exist within the MK party, not only within the structures of the MK party, but also which escalates now to one of the spheres of government of South Africa, of the state, which is the legislative arm, which will ultimately affect the legislature of KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga, and ultimately the National Assembly.
Absolutely. Help us with this in terms of, if a person of the stature of Dr. John Slaughter then is supposed to deliver a speech on behalf of his party, which he did, and the chief whip comes and says, here's another speech for you. I mean, is he obliged to listen to him and say, fine, I will read your speech, effectively unprepared, unplanned?
He's not necessarily obliged to, but one would consider that the chief whip of the party and the caucus leader work hand in hand with the various whooperies of the party. They work in hand. They are essentially the custodian of the organization when it comes to the running of the day-to-day business of the caucus of the MKP within the legislative arm of the state. That would be the National Assembly. So John Hlophe and ultimately Mzwanele Manyi are the ones who coordinate what happens to the caucus of the MKP, being Mzwanele Manyi being the what may say the managing director or the chief operations officer, the coup of the MKP within Parliament, and John Hlophe being the chief executive officer. So they would work hand in hand. They are ultimately what you may call the senior management team, SMT, of the MKP within the National Assembly, and they would have to work hand in hand. Whatever speech John Hlophe may have crafted or drafted to debate at the State of the Nation address, it would have to be in collaboration, working side by side with Mzwanele Manyi, who would be the chief whip of the organization.
Well, I mean, that is why it's all the more bizarre, because of Dr. John Hlophe being who he is. I'm just trying to imagine, I mean, why would there not be a pushback from him? You know, we tend to associate no pushback from a junior person who's just too happy to be there. But, you know, in this case here, to borrow a phrase that was used at the same event, is like, why would he be bullied or allowed to be bullied?
Let's just put it simply like this. If you are a member of an organization and you are the deputy president of the party, just like John Hlophe is the deputy president of the MKP, if a chief whip comes to you and says, this is the speech you must deliver at the State of the Nation address, it comes from the highest office within the party, it comes from Ubaba meaning former President Jacob Zuma in this instance as the president of the MKP, and you are literally going onto the podium, there's very little time for you to call the president of the party, Jacob Zuma, to check with him whether this is the speech that has been written. Also, if you start doubting and you call former President Zuma of the MKP, it will ultimately mean that you are casting doubt upon your chief whip. It's just a recipe for disaster and a recipe for mistrust among those who are leading the MKP within the caucus of the National Assembly, which has ultimately resulted now in John Hlophe ultimately saying to Mzwanele Manyi that the working relationship has broken down and he can no longer work with Mzwanele Manyi due to the distrust that has now been emanated and has come out to the fore between the two, which ultimately led to the caucus being divided yesterday when they held their caucus meeting, and those whom are sympathetic to John Hlophe ultimately went for the head of Mzwanele Manyi within that caucus meeting.
And when they went for the head, what did they do?
They essentially confronted him in saying that he's sowing divisions within the party. He is trying to make John Hlophe look bad. He's trying to sabotage the caucus leader, which will also ultimately cascade to the divisions that are there within the party, which will also emanate and have a link to the spat that was there within the public domain when Duduzile Zuma Sambula went on an onslaught on social media, on X, against the MKP Secretary General Floyd Niko Shivambu, calling all sorts of defamatory words against the Secretary General of the party, where even in her apology, she did not apologize at all to Floyd Shivambu, but instead apologized to the party leader, Jacob Zuma, and to the structures of the organization and to the officials of the organization, but did not personally apologize to Floyd Niko Shivambu per instruction of the party leader, Jacob Zuma.
So let's do this. We'll keep them separate and at the moment bring them both together and look at what happens with the MK in the future, right? So the last thing regarding Dr. John Hlophe and Mzwanele Manyi, right? If you're saying that it's very clear the working relationship is broken down, right? Where do they go from here?
It is not clear where do they go from here. That will ultimately mean the officials of the organization of the MKP or the High Command will have to come together, deliberate on what's currently happening within the divisions of the MKP within the National Assembly, knowing that the MKP is the official opposition, and quite frankly, they have not yet gotten off the blocks as the official opposition of the party. They are still at the starting point of the race, with the EFF seemingly trying to speed ahead in overtaking them as the official opposition. When you saw the back to school campaigns, the EFF was all over the MKP. We are not seeing them anywhere in the recent by-elections that are being held across the country. They are being hammered left, right and center on a policy framework and a debate framework and an opposition framework within the National Assembly. They are nowhere to be seen. They are opposing the Expropriation Act signed into law by President President Ramaphosa. They have not yet practically said what must be done and what must be counted from that particular expropriation act that is now basically been put as an act of law within the country. So they have not yet gotten off the blocks as an official opposition, and they've just been entangled in political and leadership disputes for a very long time now, and they've not yet effectively cemented and stamped their authority as the official opposition within the country.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's then talk about the Zuma daughter factor, Duduzile Zuma, as well as Floyd Shivambu, without repeating what was said before, because yes, we've covered that story about the Twitter war, so to speak, right? But the most significant one is, yes, an apology was there. Yes, there was no apology to Floyd Shivambu. We know that. But a lot of the stories doing the rounds in the last day has been that, in fact, Jacob Zuma and his family are closing ranks against Floyd Shivambu. Do you know much about that?
I can't comment more or less about Jacob Zuma's family closing ranks against Nico Shivambu, because if you look at the historical context, Floyd Shivambu was brought into the MKP by Jacob Zuma himself, working side by side and in cahoots with Makasela Mzobe, who is the head of presidency of the MKP. They are trying to put systems in place in order to run the party, systems that will see less of alleged funds being siphoned from the party by alleged leaders of the party, either in the KwaZulu-Natal provincial legislature, the National Assembly, or so on and so forth, but have proper working systems within an organization that, I'll say it loosely in isiZulu, so that which would basically mean it's a free for all within the organization. That is what seemingly Floyd Shivambu has tried to do, but it has irked some within the party who may have benefited through the mayhem and the chaos that was there within the MKP before the arrival of Floyd Shivambu. But Floyd Shivambu himself has not showered himself in glory within the party. For instance, if we check what happened over the weekend, those who are members of parliament of the MKP accused Floyd Shivambu of trying to implement the EFF constitution within the MKP, which would see spousal flights of MKP members of parliament being taken away from them, and those particular spousal flights being utilized by the organization, which is something that happens within the economic freedom fighters. Also, the MKP has complained that they don't have constituency offices, something Floyd Shivambu says there's no need for constituency offices. You must operate like the economic freedom fighters is operating, because the EFF does not have constituency offices. The EFF has got regional offices where there are members of parliament who are deployed within the various regions across the country in their constituency offices, tend to operate from those particular offices. So those are the complaints that are currently there within the MKP. They want to operate in a similar fashion as the African National Congress, but Floyd Shivambu is pointing them in another direction, which some of the MKP members of parliament are seemingly not agreeing within that posture. And seemingly, let's put it point blank, those who see themselves as the true founders of the MKP feel as if they are now being overshadowed by those who recently joined the party after the 29th of May elections.
And that's a point that's been made already. Okay, let's end with this, right? I mean, maybe a couple of points. One is there's been no response from the MK party after Duduzile Zuma's response, the one that did not mention Floyd Shivambu. How significant is that? That's one. And here's the broad thought. I mean, there seems to be more changes within the MK party in terms of, MPs coming and going, more substitutions, and you will get at a Soweto derby if you get my point, right? Which then leaves us with this all important question, right? What's the one thing that the MK party has to do, and to do very, very quickly, and who would be that person leading that change? You've got 30 seconds to answer that.
It's about leadership stamping their authority on the organization. The difficulty in that is that Duduzile Zuma Sambula is the daughter of the leader of the party, Jacob Zuma. He ultimately, Duduzile has been with Jacob Zuma through thick and thin, through the rape trial, through everything Zuma has gone through the formation of the MKP. When Zuma was working underground, Duduzile Zuma was constantly there with her. So it's not an easy decision to discipline or to expel her from the organization, but she is expressing certain displeasure, and it will be rather interesting. Who does Jacob Zuma choose? Does he choose his daughter over the organization, or does he choose the organization over his daughter? Either way, it's a catch-22. is caught between a rock and a hard place. It's a very difficult decision to make. If he chooses the organization, he stands to lose his daughter. If he chooses his daughter, he stands to lose authority and legitimacy within the organization.
Well, that's where we leave it. Your time's up. The question is it time up for the MK Party? Let's see what happens next. I'm Kello Maseko. Appreciate your insights here on the National Pulse.
In business, a rand saved is a rand earned. And almost 100,000 businesses trust OUTsurance.
We're in the security industry. Every month we save 1,488 rand with OUTsurance. Just having made the switch from our previous service provider to OUTsurance has allowed us to put another vehicle onto our fleet.
For your business insurance, contact OUTsurance to see how much your business could save. SMS quote to 43328 for immediate cover, or visit outsurance.co.za today. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Defending champions are eager to display a top-class brand of football to emphasize why they are Wienerkusen, while the Bavarians are confident this is their season. This is the Bundesliga, football as it's meant to be. Catch the Battle of Giants, Bayer Leverkusen FC versus Bayern München FC on Saturday, 15 February at 7:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. CFI, a global leader in online trading, is now in South Africa. Access 15,000 plus instruments, currencies, stocks, metals, crypto CFDs, indices, futures, and more on world-class platforms. Enjoy zero pip spreads, no commission fees, and 24/7 support for confident trading. Visit CFI.trade for a secure, transparent trading experience. Don't miss the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda, Tuesdays at 16:45. Proudly sponsored by CFI. CFI Financial, an authorized financial services provider. T's and C's apply.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, certainly want to get your thoughts, your comments with regard to the MK Party. 086 000 2032. You can call in. We won't take your calls right away, but we'll certainly take your WhatsApp, text, or voice notes immediately. 0614 104 107. And then there's nothing stopping you tweeting it out. Just tweet your thoughts. Hashtag the National Pulse, tag SFM Radio, and tag myself, Ashraf Garda. Right, what do you make of what's going on in the Ukraine? There's not a day since Donald Trump ascended to power with Elon Musk on his side. I need to say that because they've been sitting together at the White House, as you know, right, that there's not been a day that no changes have been made. Like every single day something's happening. The latest one, coming out of what may have happened around the Gaza story, is being talks now of a Ukraine peace talks that may well hold, which has not happened in a long, long time. So let's find out what exactly has been agreed upon, if anything, and what does this mean, with Professor John Stremlau, the Professor of International Relations at Wits University. Prof. Stremlau, good to connect with you on the National Pulse. Hi.
Well, thank you, Ashraf. I'm a little bit nervous about being expert on anything that Trump does, but there is a big story right now about his conversation with Putin. So,
well, I mean, you'd be right if you said, I don't know what's going to happen next. I mean, I would completely concur with you. It makes it all the more important that we do talk about it anyway, right? So let's start with the facts here. Do we have a deal? Do we have a peace deal between the Ukrainians and the Russians?
Well, let me just back up for a second and make a declarative statement that we all want peace, and certainly Cyril Ramaphosa and the South African government want to have a peace agreement. But there is this nagging question about what Putin and Trump said to each other about the peace settlement absent Zelensky and the Ukrainians. I mean, there are two parties to this dispute, and no one argues. And Naledi Pandor, who was the DIRCO minister at the time, said immediately that this was an affront against the sovereign state, and by a Security Council member and a permanent Security Council member of the UN. And it was an imperial colonial push by Putin against the Ukrainian people, who surprised the world by their resistance and subsequently NATO has rallied to their support, and now there is a problem of how do you get to peace, and certainly Trump and Putin seem to think that they have a pathway forward, but it may be at the expense of the Ukrainians and for Hexpeth, the Secretary of Defense, and Putin, and then Trump to say that that there's not a role for Ukraine in NATO. That's a voluntary organization, and NATO is something that I thought was going to be bargained at the table on, but it's apparently off the table now.
So, look, we do know that Trump is closer to Putin than the United States former President Biden has been ever close to, for example. So we know that part, right? But again, in terms of these trade-offs, does it come across to you that, again, Trump is acting unilaterally in the same way he's advanced the issues around exiting the people of Gaza out of that region as if, we'll take it over? So the point I'm making about one is to stop the war because you don't want to have war. But if, for example, deal with the war is that Ukraine does not reclaim any lost territory and does not have any bind to NATO, where would that then leave the Ukraine, and why would they accept it?
Well, they may not have any choice because they really have taken huge casualties and much abuse, and there were 150, reportedly 150 drones thrown at Ukraine by Russia overnight, last night. And a lot of them were shot down, but nevertheless, that still is a reality. And no one thinks that a peace deal will leave Putin empty-handed from the 2014 and then subsequent pushes into the Donbass and certainly Crimea. So, we all, at the back of our minds, think that there's going to have to be some sort of a settlement, but there needs to be security guarantees for Ukraine. And I'm glad you mentioned Gaza because I'm equally critical of Trump's approach to which he seems to be backing Bibi Netanyahu for the Israeli Prime Minister for ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people, and that's also wrong.
Well, it does, and maybe just the last thing here, it does give us, if not a complete insight, a snapshot into, the erratic mind of Donald Trump. Like, you can't completely read him on the one hand. On the other hand, you can say that he does get what he wants. I've heard a UAE interview from one of the UAE ambassadors, very, very mellow regarding the Gaza issue. Now, the only reason people would say that type of thing, and I'm looking at the Jordanian leader the other day, is clearly Trump appears to have a hold over people or land or countries in a way that very few others have got.
Well, he's very transactional, and yet with the relationship with Putin, we really don't know what Putin has on him or whether he's going to deliver for Putin, and yet he gives every evidence of an autocrat in the making, and the oligarchs. I was just reading a study of this morning. The oligarchs bailed him out in the early 2000s when his real estate business was in terrible shape, and the banks wouldn't lend him any money. And so, you never know with Putin and Trump. And the Mueller report shows that the Russians were very active in the 2016 campaign against Clinton.
All right,
but also with backing Trump. But anyway.
Absolutely. Well, lots of comment, lots of thoughts there with an exclamation mark, if not just a question mark. Professor John Stremlau, Professor of International Relations at Wits University. What a time to be dabbling in international relations. Just think about that. Let's get the news headlines. Here's Ondela.
Thank you, Ashraf. In the news headlines, SASSA has called on social grant beneficiaries to change their gold SASSA cards for the new Black Post bank cards urgently. The agency says they have until the 28th of February to do so. President Cyril Ramaphosa has highlighted the importance of uniting as a country amid global tensions, and Germany's defense minister has accused U.S. President Donald Trump of making concessions to Russia before peace talks have even started. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Starting off in Johannesburg, the M1 southbound is slow moving towards Boysons. Witkoppen Road westbound in Paulshof has a crash reported at Agter Road. The R59 northbound in Alberton has delays on the link to the N12 west at Reading Interchange, and Eskampa Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Moot Street. In KZN on the M7, a stationary truck reported at Wakesley Road. On the N2, community unrest reported just west of Pongola, so expect delays. The M4 southbound has a truck crash reported at the M7 highway. The M7 is queuing at Recreation Road. The M4 northbound has a crash reported near Bayhead Road Bridge, and the M13 westbound in Kloof has barrier repair works underway at the top of Fields Hill. In Cape Town, the M5 northbound slow moving towards the N1 Koeberg interchange. The M3 northbound has a crash near Struben Road. Bakencross Street outbound is slow moving towards the elevated freeway, and Victoria Road outbound slow moving through Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, not so much the Blitzkrieg, but the Blitzbokke. Let's talk about them to me.
Well, a very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. The Springbok Sevens have made two changes to their 13-man squad for the Vancouver tournament of the World Rugby 7 Series next weekend. Sebastian Job is back in the squad for the first time in almost 2 years, and he comes in to replace injured Zane Davids, while Tristan Lades returns in place of Devald Human. Meanwhile, Vincent Chituka retains the Sharks captaincy in the absence of Springboks Eben Etzebeth and Siya Kolisi against the Bulls at Loftus on Saturday. Chituka is one of a number of changes to the forward pack that stood up to the Bulls in their first round clash in Durban less than 2 months ago. Etzebeth has been sidelined with concussion symptoms from a head knock in the first week of December, while Kolisi, along with scrum half Jaden Hendricks, has been given time off in line with Bok resting protocols. Then moving on to football, Amajimbos have been drawn alongside Burkina Faso, UNIFAC and Egypt in Group B of the 2025 Total Energies Under-17 Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco, and it's happening from the 30th of March to the 19th of April. A record 10 African nations from the tournament will qualify for the 48-team FIFA Under-17 World Cup that will be staged in Qatar from the 5th to the 27th of November. Then in cricket, South Africa has announced that Macron Sport will be their new official technical partner. This is after agreeing a 5-year deal. The Italian brand will manufacture playing and training kits for the Proteas men's, Proteas women's and development teams. In the meantime, SA20 Commissioner Graham Smith says that they are working closely with Cricket South Africa on growing a talent pool of black players through their grassroots programs. This is in response to criticism that the SA20 League lacks representation, especially when it comes to players of colour. Now, Smith says that they are in support of diversity and will continue to create awareness to improve the transformation agenda.
You know, Cricket South Africa made a decision once the private investment came in, is that, you know, the league would provide the platform for players, but, you know, the selection of players would come from the teams themselves. So we are working with Cricket South Africa, obviously, on growing, you know, the talent pool, you know, creating awareness, building on things. I mean, I think from our perspective now, you know, you can see SA20 just 2.5 years in, and the grassroots programs that we personally investing in alongside Cricket South Africa, you know, so under 19 girls camps, umpire exchange programs, you know, some of our under 19 coaches from the ladies went over and experienced, you know, firsthand alongside some of our RPL teams, you know, got experience. And then we launched schools this year. So I would say outside Cricket South Africa, we now are the single biggest investor back into the grassroots programs, and we continue to work with them on obviously improving all aspects, including, I guess, the transformation agenda as well.
And this brings me to the question of, does it mean that there are no properly talented players of colour in the country right now? Because obviously with the SA20, it works like the IPL. They bid for the players, right? And is there no way that there could be some sort of rules that there should be some sort of quota in terms of every single team must have a certain number of players of colours?
So what do you think? It's complex, isn't it?
It's very complex.
Well, I'm saying it's complex. It's not about the obvious. There was a lack of representativity of black African players at the SA20. That's a fact. There were players, but they were absent, right? They were largely absent. The question is, as if I listen to Graeme Smith, how do you manage that? Because this entire franchise operation is owned by foreign clubs who then are literally here on a franchise. Like when I say franchise, they're visiting for a month, right? And they've got budgets like you have Monopoly or Fantasy League and buy the players on. And at that stage, their duty is to win. They're not going to be interested in our domestic politics.
Of course. So
to what stage does Graeme Smith and others impose the domestic politics that we do need to see within that? It's a conundrum.
So then does it go back to my question that perhaps we don't have talented enough players of colour?
Well, his final point was about
grassroots,
growing the pool. Now, that part I agree, because even Makhaya Ntini made the point at his heyday. He hated being called this quota player when he was at the top of his game. Like, what do you mean? I think Hashim Amla, they were just labeling players because they were players of colour, right? And what you want to have a situation is that Temba Bavuma gets dropped and replaced by another player who just happens to be black, because like how you do it in soccer, like the best player plays on the day, but you can only do that when your talent pool is big enough. It must come and it must increase in droves, and we're nowhere near that in cricket.
Very unfortunate. But let me end things off with tennis. Diego Schwartzman booked his place in the second round of the ATP 250 Argentina Open in his home city of Buenos Aires and put his retirement from tennis on hold for one more match at least. He claimed a 7-6, 4-6 and 6-3 win over Nicolas Jarry of Chile. And also, I don't know, Ashraf, if you have noticed that Roger Federer is in the country. There was a video that actually went viral with
his chommy.
Yeah, with Sia Kolisi.
Yeah.
So basically, they are pushing an initiative that is to give to disadvantaged children a strong start in education, and they're partnering through their foundations to help focus on supporting kids from grade R and through primary school. But also remember that Federer has a foundation and his offices are in Johannesburg. And Federer says that he's looking to support children through both sports and academics in the country.
So are you suggesting we need to camp out at his offices? What are you suggesting?
We need to have Roger Federer here.
We should partner SAFM with him. But either way, if you can't do that now, we need to go and camp out at his Joburg offices or something
Right.
along that line. To me, I'll leave it to you to sort it out, 007 or something along that line.
I'll have more sports in the next hour.
Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the tooth fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does everyone at your company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampo on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
The Mangaung Metro Municipality is hosting an investment summit to bring investment to Bloemfontein. The summit will take place on 19 and 20 February at the City Hall and aims to bring together different economic role players from across the country and abroad. To be part of the summit or for more info, call 073-184-8972 or send an email to summit@mangaung.co.za. Mangaung, at the heart of it all.
Every person, no matter who you are, what music you're inclined to listen to, and what you do with your weekends, you need a weekend playlist. that musical mix of music that accompanies the lazy weekends, whether catching up with friends and family or just taking some time to reflect. Tune in to The Soundtrack of Your Life with me, Ernest Pillay, Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 4 on SAFM.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
So we'll talk about water, or the lack of water in Joburg. Like, you know, the organization, the utility company is called Joburg Water. Well, really, it's a case of Joburg no water for 4 or 5 days in many parts of Joburg's northern suburbs. It is crazy. We will talk about that later on. Let's, however, do some celebrations of sorts with Ibrahim Patel, the president of the newly elected president of the Menara Chamber of Commerce. Ibrahim, appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting here on the National Pulse.
Thank you very much, Ashraf, for having me on board, and congratulations and good wishes on World Radio Day.
Absolutely. I think you thank you for that. But similarly, I need to tell you, because I think this probably happens with you all the time, not to be confused with the other Ibrahim Patel, isn't it?
With the former minister, yes.
Yeah. How often does that happen? And I'm saying in this case, if I left it unchecked, then I think the audience would think we're talking about the former minister who's now got a new position.
Well, it used to shadow me quite a lot when the minister was the minister, but I think that on his retirement, there's less of that.
Okay, and of course, he is retired, but you're the president of the Menara Chamber. Tell me firstly, I know you've been involved with that organization for a while, besides your own personal business interests in KZN. What is the Menara Chamber, and what are the goals and aims of it?
So the Menara Chamber of Commerce is a formal business representation organization that was formed in May of 2000, and its goal has been to represent smaller businesses. Initially, it was formulated out of the Muslim community, but the organization has membership across all communities and sectors, and is irrespective of race, religion, or color or creed. It has grown over the years, and the focus has been primarily on networking businesses. So how do we connect businesses from across the different regions so that we strengthen the opportunity to do business amongst South African businesses at the one stage, and then between South African businesses and businesses at a global level? And that has been the key focus of the organization.
So therefore, businesses become members, and then that allows them a way of a serious business networking around the world, right? Why would they need you to do that?
Well, over the years, people have been able to communicate directly, but a chamber as an organization has an ability to give a more, would I say, an official introduction. So when a member is wanting to meet with a business in another country, we have MOUs that have been signed with chamber organizations across the world, whether it is between the Menara Chamber and, let's say, for instance, in South Africa, the Durban Chamber, the Johannesburg Chamber, the Western Cape Chamber, Saki, Bursa. We have these relationships, and that makes it easier to open the doors for that networking to take place. So yes, over the years, with the better communication and technology, people are able to connect directly, but a chamber gives them the opportunity to do it at a more official level. So at the same time, we host delegations that come from other countries into South Africa, business delegations that would want to meet with businesses in South Africa to formulate business relationships. We take the delegations out of South Africa to other parts of the world and to meet with other businesses. And they are hosted formally by chambers of commerce in the countries that we are visiting.
Okay, and I take it that endorsement of the chamber, obviously a critically important endorsement. Let's then talk about your role. So you've been involved on the board, in and out, in some capacity for a long time. Why did you see fit? I mean, we've had a whole lot of people returning. I mean, did I say Donald Trump has returned as the American president? Is that more in vogue? Hold it. I have a job to do, and I can do it now.
Well, I think the chamber has elections on a regular basis, and we elect a president. I was chair of the trade and investment portfolio for a number of years, and the membership has now seen that they is an opportunity for my vision to take the chamber forward. So when I say my vision, my focus has been on how do we bring growth into the services of the chamber. So if we look at the chamber over the years has grown from being a KZN Durban-based organization to having offices in Gauteng, and we recently opened up offices in Cape Town, in the Western Cape, to service 3 regions. So our membership is now active across 3 critical economic zones of the country, and so we are servicing those 3 regions, and that is the focus, is how do we grow the services of the chamber across South Africa, and how do we strengthen the relationships between South Africa and other countries. So there are opportunities, particularly if I take, for instance, and it seems like it's not a good word to use these days, but it's the reality of life, is that South Africa is a key member of BRICS, and BRICS has expanded to include a number of other countries. So if we look at the expanded BRICS and the relationships that have been offered out of the expanded BRICS, we now see that South Africa has a relationship with Indonesia having entered into BRICS, Turkey having entered into BRICS, Saudi Arabia was invited into the BRICS formation, and a number of other countries. So, springboarding the relationships, and if we look at a twist in that relationship, South Africa has a relationship with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which gives us access into the African countries. But at the same time, we also have now cemented a relationship that allows South Africa to be an observer member in the ASEAN region, and that is the countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, and other countries in the region.
Because that reminds me, you've got a relationship with that region specifically, where I think you've been, honorary consul of sorts with Indonesia, right? And clearly, I would expect you're going to leverage off that relationship for the benefit of South Africa, and in this case, the members of the Minara Chamber.
Well, not just particularly in that region, but other regions as well. So as we see that there is demand in particular regions, we'll be leveraging that. So yes, I would use the relationships that I have in some of those regions to increase the relationship in those regions, but it's not confined to those particular regions. So we're also targeting into Africa. How do we grow business into sub-Saharan Africa, the huge opportunities that they are there for us in sub-Saharan Africa? How do we also leverage the relationship that we have with the EU and with the UK, and how we can move businesses into those regions? Yeah. South African products are now in a huge demand. We've just seen that the Minister of Agriculture has announced the resumption of the supply of fruit, particularly apples, to Thailand.
Apples.
Apples going off to Thailand. South Africa signed last year the export agreement that unlocked the opportunity to export beef from South Africa into the Middle East. We're seeing the similar kind of thing in the chicken industry to China. So there's a lot of relationships and opportunities that these relationships can unlock.
Okay. Yes, the last thing, and you can answer this in 1 minute flat, and then I'll let you go. Right? What are your thoughts about the power of the Minara Chamber to produce thought leader conversation pieces? That means opinion pieces, research based on a range of opinions on the one hand, and linked to that, and this is a very fascinatingly topical word, to be able to lobby around the world based upon those views. And I say topical because a lot of conversations around AfriForum, etc. But how do you use that? Is that part of the plan too?
Minara has been very effective in lobbying, and we've lobbied the South African government on a number of positions that impacted businesses, not just particularly Minara member businesses, but the business community in general. We've partnered, and just to give you an example, we partnered with the Durban Chamber last year in lobbying the president directly on the issues that were affecting eThekwini, and out of that came the eThekwini Presidential Working Group, which then took the different clusters together to unlock the challenges that eThekwini has faced, and we've seen a great deal of success out of that, and that was business using its voice and lobbying government. Producing thought leadership discussions, I think that is very critical. And Ashraf, you have been at the forefront of that. You've been involved in a number of discussions, and I think that at some point as the chamber, we're going to tap into you to come up with some of those thought leadership guidelines and the strategy around that, because Ashraf, you are in a very, very well-placed position as the voice of South Africa, and particularly around your concept of the champion South African. And I think that that is something that we need to highlight, that as South Africans, each one of us should be a champion of our country. We should be a champion citizen. And so we can showcase to the world that South Africa has these great prospects, and we are a great nation.
Well, you just end up on a conversation that leaves me on a high, because I think you're spot on. You know, whatever Trump is saying about our country, it's the responsibility is on us to champion our nation, to champion South Africa. So, points taken. We'll have that coffee one day soon, I'm sure about that. Ibrahim Patel, now the president.
Thank you very much, Ashraf.
The president of the Minara Chamber. And there we are, fascinating conversation in terms of where they go next. The Minara Chamber of Commerce, stretching out from initially KZN, but now all around the country and beyond.
The whispers in the morning as I look in your
This February, the month of love and self-care, at SAFM we're celebrating with you, spreading love to all. Let's embrace kindness, connection and self-care. And as always, SAFM will continue leading the conversations that move us through love, wellness and everything in between. This month, let's love ourselves, love each other, and keep the conversation going. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
'Cause I'm your lady and you are my man.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
I'll tell you what, I hope Ibrahim Patel should be listening to the conversation we have next, because it is all about growing businesses in many different ways, right? With me is Gabriel Swanepoel, the country general manager for Southern Africa of MasterCard. Gabriel, appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting to us here on the National Pulse.
Sure, it's good to talk to you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, I have to say, this is someone who understands marketing trends and branding. That line of, for everything else, there's MasterCard. It just sticks out, and I cannot forget it, right? Firstly, I mean, how do you leverage of that? I mean, I know it's a campaign from many years ago, but it's a payoff line that works.
It really is. It's the priceless campaign, and I think it's been the long-running one of the best marketing global campaigns ever. We leverage it today with highlighting those moments that's precious, not just for our loved ones and the families that we are in, but also as part of the communities and the experience that we have.
Absolutely.
And, that's ultimately part of the human experience, right?
Right. So picking
that's
up on the challenges of what Ibrahim Patel from the Minara Chamber made, talking to you, I think, is most opportune. Where MasterCard fits in, I understand, in terms of supporting SMEs regarding the issues of, finance or financial inclusion or exclusion in many ways as well, right? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I think that what's important to recognize about the small and medium enterprises, and especially in a country like South Africa, because that's really the heartbeat of the economy, right? And I think that what we need to consider is the contribution of SMEs, which I think often get lost in the noise. And that contribution consists of, for example, 60% of the country's labor force is employed by small and micro enterprises. It comprises of more than 3 million businesses out there, right, which has had just phenomenal growth. And so if you think of MasterCard's commitment to that, we recognize the contribution that these small and micro enterprises make, especially in emerging markets like South Africa. And we've made a commitment some years back, to make sure that over 1 billion individuals are banked, and after that we bring 50 million micro enterprises into the formal economy, of which 25 million of those businesses need to be women entrepreneurs, and we're on track to achieve that, and it's testament just to the effort and the way that these communities come together to deliver goods and services into that type of
So practically, give us an example of that when we talk about SMEs and their problems and your MasterCard's drive to accelerate financial inclusion. How would you go about doing so?
So you think about cash, right? And you think about cash flow availability, and you think about the liquidity of those businesses, and then you consider the constraints around supply chain and constraints around distribution. And I think that what MasterCard is trying to do is just to shine a light on the economic activity for those individuals and for those entities that that operate micro enterprises that allows them to digitize flows. When we say digitize flows, it makes the flow and the exchange of value a little bit more palatable, which then means that from a credit rating perspective, and if you look at lenders and you look at companies that assist these businesses, they've got alternative ways of scoring for credit, which in turn allows these businesses to flourish because they have access to cash and because they have the ability then to buy the goods and services that they need to on-sell into their customer bases. I think the second thing that's important, Ashraf, is, MasterCard has invested in a on-soil infrastructure in South Africa that went live last year. And what we're doing at the moment is we're working with the broader payments ecosystem to make sure that we introduce more settlement windows for the banks that would in turn allow them to pay these smaller micro enterprises more often, for digital transactions that they accept. And we believe that by the end of this year, we'll be in a position where we can settle more than 80% of MasterCard merchants out there that accept MasterCards today, which is just testament to the commitment that we're making to equip and enable these businesses.
And for many people, when they look at typically a credit card company, they just think about perhaps funding in a very literal sense of the word. Yet the reality is, outside of what you've just told me, is that organizations like yours are so innovative that outside the obvious, access to funding or finance, right, there's so much more that they can leverage off you. Are there things that they can do, that innovation or innovative products that you've created or solutions that they can leverage off?
Absolutely. So, I think we always keep one eye on the future, right? The world is ever evolving. And as the world evolves, we know that where we go together, we have success, but where we go alone, there's fragmentation. And I think that one of the principles that MasterCard thinks through in terms of partnership, it's a bottoms-up approach to understand what the real needs are around the consumer and the merchant base in South Africa, and then understanding what kind of partnerships we need to forge in order to deliver, on the needs of consumers, merchants, and our partners alike. And so the collaboration with the fintech community is absolutely critical for us. One example is a collaboration with Sava, which leverages their payment transaction system to provide companies in South Africa, but also Nigeria, Kenya, and Egypt with expense management tools, which is an example. And we identify these businesses, and we have a program called StartPath, which then allows them to, exposure into all of the markets that MasterCard operate in. And it also allows them to, access the broader MasterCard partner network, which means that, these partnerships, becomes a virtuous cycle where new relationships are forged and new innovative projects are provided to the markets that we operate in.
Yeah. Okay, let's wrap up with this. I mean, in terms of, there's always a concern around safety and security, so perhaps you can answer that and in one go also talk about the trust that people have even using cards as provided by MasterCard, because we're clearly moving away from a cash-based society, aren't we? You've got a minute to answer that.
Yeah. So look, I think the fundamental point to make here is, trust is vital. It's the bedrock of financial services. It's critical to financial inclusion, and it's the foundation of future growth. And so when we think about cyber threats, we come at it from a number of angles. I think the first one is to make sure that transactions are secure. We do that through, driving confidence in the way that transactions take place, uniformity for consumers. We believe data privacy is a human right. We take things like ID verification very seriously, making sure that, authentication is supported by AI-driven cybersecurity software, introducing things like biometrics, and ultimately, making sure that through partnerships, like I mentioned previously, an acquisition MasterCard bank like Brighterion, currently provide fraud prevention tools to more than 60,000 merchants across the continent. And so, when we think about what that translates into, what consumers can be comfortable of, is that from a data and services perspective, we've got more than 2,000 data scientists, analysts, and engineers working to make sure that, we maintain the integrity of the payment system and that we secure transactions and protect the data of consumers.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Gabriel Swanepoel, Country General Manager for Southern Africa. And I'll once again end with that payoff line. Not so much for everything else, there's MasterCard. I would think in this case here is a case of for everything, there's MasterCard. Make a note of that, Gabriel Swanepoel. Thanks for your time. Let's get the news. It's 4 o'clock. Here's Ondela.
Thank you, Ashraf. Top stories at 4. Mortal remains of SANDF soldiers have arrived, and Ramaphosa speaks on unity amid global tensions. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good afternoon. The mortal remains of the 14 SANDF soldiers killed in the DRC have now arrived at the Air Force Base Swartkrop outside Pretoria. The families have identified the remains of the loved ones and will be handed over to them this evening. President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to attend the handover ceremony. The soldiers, who were part of a peacekeeping mission, were killed during a confrontation with M23 rebels in the DRC. Meanwhile, Eastern Cape citizens have urged the government to ensure that the families of the fallen soldiers are well looked after. Some of the people in the Buffalo City Metro in East London described the death of the soldiers as a loss to the nation. SASSA has called on social grant beneficiaries to change their gold SASSA cards for the new Black Post bank cards urgently. The agency says they have until the 28th of February to do so. The upgrade comes with the new security features to help protect beneficiaries from fraudsters. There are about 3.5 million grant recipients in South Africa. SASSA spokesperson Baseka Letsatsi says only about 1 million people have upgraded their cards and the deadline is looming.
Unfortunately, the lifespan of the gold SASSA card is coming to an end on the 28th of February. And if you don't change it, you won't be able to access your resources and you'll be highly inconvenienced. This process started 6 months ago. We have expected people to hit the call, but we are South Africans, we always wait for the last moment. I think it's important for people not to wait for the 28th of February.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has highlighted the importance of uniting as a country amid global tensions. Replying to political parties in Parliament after the solar debate, he spoke on the importance of resolving the country's internal issues instead of seeking help from foreign countries. This after advocacy group AfriForum approached the U.S. about the enactment of the Expropriation Act, which saw aid to country being cut. Ramaphosa explains.
We want to live together in peace, harmony, and equality. We do want to see our country succeed and growing. We must not allow others to define us, but more importantly, to divide us. At a time like this, we need to stand united as a nation, particularly now when we are facing a harsh global wind. This is not the time for any of us to rush off to foreign lands to lay complaints about issues that we ourselves can solve here in this country.
Unemployment people from Ibayi Workers Forum in Gqeberha embarked on a protest this morning, accusing Domac, a maritime services company, of not hiring people from Gqeberha. They claim that this company utilizes workers from other provinces, even though they were once appointed, and have shown that they are able to do the same work. They are also calling on Gucha Development Corporation to intervene as this company operates on their premises. The forum members have expressed their disappointment in the company, saying they had high hopes that their financial struggles would be better.
It's very sad, Siswa, because I've got twins and my mother is a pensioner. So I was a hope that I will do something in my house, but now there's nothing I can do.
It is heartbreaking that as unemployed people of Gqeberha, we are not getting any work. People from Durban and Cape Town are being hired while we sit and do nothing.
Domac has stated that they are not yet in a position to comment on the matter, while Gucha Development Corporation has failed to provide a comment. Germany's defense minister has accused U.S. President Donald Trump of making concessions to Russia before peace talks have even started. Boris Pistorius was speaking after the U.S. Defense Secretary said it was unrealistic for Ukraine to get back all the territory it had lost and rejected the prospect of Ukraine joining NATO. The BBC's Paul Moss has the details.
Donald Trump prides himself on being a tough negotiator, so he won't appreciate the suggestion that on this occasion he's shown his cards too early. Pistorius' point is that the US has already promised Russia two things it wants: to retain Ukrainian territory it captured and not to have NATO on its doorstep by allowing Ukraine to join. Mr. Trump has announced he'll meet Vladimir Putin to discuss the conflict. but he may now find himself short of bargaining chips. Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz has also weighed in, warning against peace being imposed on Ukraine.
Recapping the top story, the mortal remains of the 14 SANDF soldiers killed in the DRC have now arrived at the Air Force Base Swartkop outside Pretoria. I am Ondalambana for SFM News. Headlines at 4:30.
In sports, the South still is set for Polokwane showdown in Nedbank Cup. Chauke hoping to see netball grow into Olympic sport, and Patida succeeds Duplessis at RSCB captain for IPL 2025. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Johannesburg, the N1 southbound in Fourways is slow moving towards Winnie Mandela Drive exit. The M1 southbound is slow moving towards Omondo. The N1 northbound in Midrand is queuing towards New Road, and Eskom Patleli Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Moot Street. In KZN, the N2 northbound has a stationary vehicle near the Sibaya Drive exit. The N2 southbound has a stationary truck after the Sibaya Drive exit. The M4 southbound has a truck crash reported at the M7 highway. The M7 is queuing at Recreation Road, and the M4 northbound has a crash reported near Bayhead Road Bridge. In the Eastern Cape, on the R63, protest action reported just east of Fort Beaufort. In Cape Town, the M5 northbound slow moving towards the N1 Koeberg interchange. The M3 northbound has a crash near Struben Road. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards Okavango Road exit, and Batencross Street outbound is slow moving towards the elevated freeway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you.
V up your 2025 with Vodacom Business and Galaxy AI. Save up to 20,000 Rand with trade-in when you pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra 256 gig on a Red Business 1.5 gig plan for just 1,539 Rand per month over 24 months. Enhance your deal with the Samsung Galaxy Watch 7 eSIM for 69 Rand extra per month. Available in-store and online. Further together. Vodacom Business.
Oh, oui, oui, Jessica, I Citroën you. You are my chérie de go. I am your wild track ranger.
What are you doing?
I'm just looking on WeBuyCars' website for what I'm getting you for Valentine's Day.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, they have a nationwide spin and win promotion where you can score a guaranteed prize of up to 10,000 Rand when you purchase a car.
Ooh, now that's romantic.
There's also hundreds of discounted auction vehicles available.
So what are we waiting for?
See you this Valentine's Day weekend at WeBuyCars, the easiest way to buy and sell a car by far.
The whispers in the morning as I look in your
This February, the month of love and self-care, at SAFM we're celebrating with you, spreading love to all. Let's embrace kindness, connection and self-care. And as always, SAFM will continue leading the conversations that move us through love, wellness and everything in between. This month, let's love ourselves, love each other, and keep the conversation going. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
'Cause I'm your lady and you are my man.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So I see a message here on World Radio Day about still not playing SAFM in Port Elizabeth or Gqeberha. Goodness, there must be some problem. My apology for that, and maybe all we can do is just alert the technical teams. I would suppose they would do so already anyway. So I'm going to get Tembo Keys to notify them about it. Just talking about, World Radio Day, there's been comments about that too.
Good evening, Ashraf. In Kala. Ashraf, in this day, I want to congratulate the radio stations in this day that belongs to them, because they equip us with all the information we wouldn't know. And they keep on updating us with every movement. I thank the radio stations for that. Though sometimes they are biased, they go with the president who is standing in that day. But thanks, guys, for all. We know all because of you.
Ah, very, very kind. And you're right. I think, as I mentioned, the intimacy. And, radio is probably the most democratic of the various media forums because it allows interaction in a way that I think no other can do, isn't it? And here's an example of it.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ashraf. This is Mbongo Mboyisa. Mr. Ashraf, Zwanele Manyi has never been good nje from the word go, even when he was still like Jimmy Manyi, starting from ANN7 and then he moved to ANC. He's been causing chaos left and right nje. They should chase him away of MK, including that Duduzile Zuma who seems to be entitled. I don't know, these two, they're just destroying everything.
Well, you see, that's an example of being democratic. These voices get heard on radio, not anywhere else, isn't it?
Hey, Ashraf and all SAFM listeners, good afternoon. Well, it's a World Radio Day today, and my lecturer back in the days, used to tell me that radio is a theater of mind, and indeed, it is a theater of mind. Quite, I can feel, for MK, with the problems that they are confronting right now, of Floyd and the daughter of Jacob Zuma, and the uproar with Jimmy Manyi and Dr. Hlophe. Well, one would believe that this is not going to be the same case as Cope. This is Andile from Stegspruit in the Eastern Cape, nearest to borders.
Well, there we are. Will it be the same as Cope? But they sound a little even better than Cope. I mean, let's get that right, okay? Well, I tell you what, on World Radio Day, I did say I'll give a quick line about where my own radio journey. Let me delay that because we're out of time. Let me delay that. In fact, maybe I can do it right now, okay? Because like Kizzy's saying, come on, don't leave it for later. You said after 4 o'clock, so let's just do it anyway. So here's my quick 2 minutes radio story, okay? One, my first interest in radio, in terms of talent, happened when I was a lightie. I was a young boy, and it was not being on radio, but for some crazy reason, when I was young and we played sports, and even board games, or even like table football, the Tata box type of thing, right? For whatever reason, when I played those sports, I gave commentary. That's point one. And then when we played board games, I'd also give commentary of those sports board games. The commentary excited me more than the actual board game we were playing, right? Then let's fast forward. What finally happened, I did nothing about it, okay? Because in those years, honestly, if you were a black South African as I am, you're cut out of mainstream media, so you don't even consider that as an option. When community radio started, I made a call. I made a call to a community radio station. Well, then the name was changed then to The Voice, right? And I told them about hosting a team of youngsters ahead of their cup final the next day. And I'm talking about kids like 10-year-old boys and, that type of thing. And they said, fine. And then they called me the day before the interviews and said, you know what? None of us knows enough about sport. I know you called us to set it up, but can you do the interviews? And that's how I got on radio. So that day, unplanned, I got on radio. And in a few minutes of interviewing these people about the cup final the next day, the Sunday, the station manager put up a sign 10 minutes into the conversation, and she said something like, Ashraf, your enthusiasm is infectious. Welcome aboard. Bottom line, I have not stopped talking since then. That continued on community radio. Then I did a course at ABC Ulwazi, which I think was a big game changer. It gave me the validation to say, hold it, you're good enough to get into mainstream media, because I was getting calls from people to say, you need to get into mainstream media. So I got calls. I did the ABC Ulwazi. When I got out of there, I knew I was good enough, but you still need a break. There's a friend of mine, Eunice Solomon, in fact, who worked at the SABC at the time, and he got wind that that 5FM were looking for a new sports anchor for a new sports slot they were creating. And they needed someone like quickly. So I then auditioned and applied. And 2 weeks later, the rest is history. I was on air. And I have not stopped being on air in some form or the other. Fast forward, 5FM, SAFM, and then, television, hosting the Special Assignments TV show. I've done some analysis on SuperSport as well. During the World Cup, I did a lot of analysis for CNN, by the way, during the 2010 World Cup, then hosting Special Assignments, standing in on interface, doing a lot of program directing. And then SAFM 2 stints, of course, as you know, from sports to current affairs, then marketing as well, then off air, then came back after a 5-year break. All of that linked to this marvel that allows us to connect on a one-on-one basis, no matter where you may be. So on this World Radio Day, that's the power. And my challenge to you is this. Can you see how irregular my entry into the radio industry happened? Well, believe me, it can happen to you if you wish it and you want to break that door down. Don't go the normal CV route and wait for the best answer. There's a way to open the door. Get the door opened up. And the rest may well be you making your history. And remember that. I told you this on World Radio Day.
The National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Is there then a need and a calling for Afrikaners, the majority of Afrikaners who are not part of AfriForum and Solidarity, to now amplify their voice like you do now, to say they have their opinion, but they're not one of us, they don't speak for us?
Yes, absolutely. We need to stand up and be counted. AfriForum has its own news media, Pretoria FM and Marula Media and all that kind of thing, and they're entitled to it. But the voice of the silent majority is not being heard. We are being railroaded by AfriForum. They are an unelected group of Afrikaner nationalists. I am not an Afrikaner nationalist. Most Afrikaners are not ethnic nationalists. And we need to stand up and say, ons is nie almal so nie.
Max de Priya.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. Missed it? Find the podcast at safm.co.za.
Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the tooth fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does everyone at your company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampo on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
The Yellow Guys have a top-class plan to play elite rugby to remain in the top 5. But second-place Giants, the Red and Blacks are undoubtedly chasing the first position. This is the top 14. Clermont-Auvergne collides with Stade Toulousain on Sunday, 16 February at 10 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Right, in fact, let's talk about Joburg Water. So, you know that you got Rand Water, then you got Joburg Water. But at the moment, there's Joburg, no water. Monday, no water. Joburg, no water. Tuesday, Joburg, no water. Wednesday, Joburg, no water. Thursday, Joburg, no water. We're talking about a significant city in South Africa and a significant city on the African continent, if not in the world. This is our normal. This is our norm. It's not even load shedding. As load shedding comes and goes, this is even worse. People have just, it's not every suburb, but there are many suburbs impacted by this. And, you know, the same things happened a few months ago. There's always issues about maintenance breakdowns of sort. So I don't know if people are even believing whatever's coming out anyway from the communication side. But having said that, we need to be asking questions. Puleng Mopele is with me from the Joburg Waters Communications and Marketing Department. Puleng, appreciate you connecting to us here on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to the interview.
Thank you. Now, of course, you heard in my intro, I'm saying people, and I know I'm on many community groups, I promise you when the councillors message, people just don't even read it. They are, to use that very South African phrase, they just cut fall, right? What exactly is the problem this time around?
If I may, we've had network challenges varying from systems going down, but then the major issue here is the demand exceeding available capacity. We buy water, as you mentioned, we buy from and there is a certain
Okay, well, I tell you what, we're struggling to pick up what you're saying. Let me just put you back onto keys and see if we can sort that out. In the meantime, we are chatting about Joburg Water and Joburg No Water, and what do you do next? How are you surviving, by the way? I have to tell you, we've got a Jojo. I think there's been a call, so we spent some money on a Jojo in December. Felt that was important, but you know what? The Jojo is like a big tank, and it relies on council water to come to the tank to fill it up. And that can't continue forever. So 3 days later, where we thought we had water, that water's gone. That's empty. So we are back like everybody else, struggling along. In the meantime, there's a comment about Home Affairs.
Afternoon, Ashraf. This is Magdalene from Bloem. Ashraf, I've got a problem here at Home Affairs Bloemfontein. I'm bringing the child for the passport. So it's for the third time we are turning back. And I came here before 20 past. It was 20 past 3 when I came in here. I'm told by the official judge that I can't go through with the child. So they expect the child to abandon the class for passport. And the child's supposed to go to overseas by June. So we need to prepare also for visa. So when will that be done? So the minister must check with.
Okay, I think that thing just froze. Let me pick up again.
Bloemfontein Home Affairs. This is bad. The treatment is bad here in Bloemfontein Home Affairs.
Okay, I'll tell you what, Magdalene, leave your details with Keys. Let's see if we can follow that story up. I must tell you, we're getting that so often that it just suggests that people are struggling with basic service delivery. So every day we're getting callers, besides listening and giving comments about Trump and the EFF and the MK and the ANC, they are saying, can you solve my problem? I have a problem. Please leave your details with Keys, Magdalene. Let's see if we can find out more about it. Let's go back then to Puleng Mopele with a different sort of problem, the water problem. Puleng, so we lost you in that initial line. You did speak about some infrastructure collapse and over demand. Maybe just repeat that point again.
Okay, I was saying our systems are impacted by various challenges, but primarily due to high demand exceeding available capacity. As you've mentioned, that there is rainwater and there is Joburg No Water. So what happens is there is a certain limit that we can get from rainwater. And at this point in time, we have exceeded that threshold that we get from rainwater. And further to the network challenges, we've had a number of power outages from the Randwater's Aikenhof pump station, and this was followed by another power failure at Mfuleni substation. So these impacted our systems quite greatly, if I may say. And this also impacted the pumping into the Randwater, Forest Hill and Aikenhof systems. And these are our biggest systems because Aikenhof supplies the Joburg Central, the Randburg Roodepoort, and the Soweto system. So you can imagine how large the area is. And we have, again, the Forest Hill system that supplies the Forest Hill, the Hector Norris, your Crown Gardens, meaning the south of Johannesburg is now impacted. You have your Yeoville barrier areas, which have been impacted for about a week or so. Then you have the deeper south, which is your Glen Vista and Kibla Park. So those were the main challenges that we were facing in the past week or two.
All right. So, I mean, you mentioned in terms of systems, let's understand this. Is it a Rand water problem in the first instance and then you feel the effects of it? Or is it a Rand water stroke Joburg water problem as well, like a combination?
If I may say, the Rand water pump station obviously works with electricity and they pump water into our reservoirs. So if they are impacted, subsequently we are also impacted. So it started again, I remember this week there was a city power power failure that impacted Rand water. So I cannot say really it's a Rand water issue because it's a power issue at the end of the day. And if Rand water is unable to pump into our reservoirs, then it means that we are not pumping anything into our reservoirs. And then our outlets, because the residents are using the water until the reservoirs are dry, that's when we start having issues.
So I mean, I live in the Joburg's northern suburbs. We haven't had water for probably 5 days now. You're saying that some in the south goes back to even last week. I mean, whatever the causes are, our inability to repair whatever the problem is urgently suggests that this is a crisis.
I cannot agree with that statement because with the Joburg CBD, if I may, we had a plant maintenance where we were changing valves at the Hector Norris pump station. And furthermore, we had a power failure that impacted the Hector Norris. So you can imagine you've just changed valves and now there's a power failure, meaning that you cannot pump anything into the systems that feeds those areas in the Joburg CBD.
I hear you. Therefore, my point, I'm not saying it's your fault. I am saying the impact of it and the inability to resolve it quickly, quickly means like 3-4 hours, right? Suggests that this is a crisis. It's going on for a week or even longer in other areas. This is a crisis. Do you really think it's not a crisis?
I cannot say it's a crisis because the maintenance was done within a day, but then afterwards we had a power failure. So what we had done, what we were supposed to do, and we did not anticipate that there will be a power issue that will then impact on the pump station. Hence, I'm saying I cannot agree when you say it's a crisis.
Okay, I'm not saying it's your fault that there's a crisis. I'm saying the fact that people don't get water for a week on end, for all intents and purposes, that is a crisis. I don't know how else to define it. I'm just saying.
Okay, yeah. If you say for people not getting water on their taps, it is a crisis. However, we had supplemented those areas with water tankers. We understand that obviously water is a basic need, and if people don't have water in their taps, they get frustrated. Hence, I'm saying all these issues, they have compounded into the current issue that we have at the city of Johannesburg.
Right.
But then, and like I said, the primary issue here, it's demand exceeding available capacity. And I would understand because it's your summer seasons and people are using water, but then they also need to work with us and use this water sparingly. Otherwise, we will have these issues year in and year out.
But I mean, they want to use it sparingly, and the fact is that, they also want to have fun with water. Nobody's necessarily wasting it, right? A lot of the wastage is because of leakages we've seen and they don't get repaired. But maybe don't answer that now because there's not enough time. Here's the one thing. What's the one thing you can tell our audience that can reassure them as to what can happen next? Because for all people listening now, the number one issue is when will they get water again? So what can you tell them?
All I can say is that they need to be just patient with us. I know that it's frustrating not to have water, but then with the rain this afternoon, we should be able to get at least some of the water restored in some areas. I know that in the far south, in your Southdale areas where they also did not have water, they now have water. So we are building up the systems, and they should have water maybe in a 2 days or 3. But I don't want to be more optimistic on that. But the rain today really assisted a great deal. So we should have water in our taps soon.
All right. So the good news is that we should get water in about 3 days' time. It sounds, it is just so confusing. Let's leave it at that. Puleng Mopeli, from Joburg Water's Communications and Marketing Department. What do you make of all of that? And therefore, the question when I ask someone today, like, how are you feeling? You know what the person said? Rather dirty. Let's get the news headlines. Here's Ondela.
Thank you, Ashraf. In the news headlines, families of the 14 SANDF soldiers who died in the eastern DRC 2 weeks ago have finally identified the remains of their loved ones. Their remains have arrived at Air Force Base Swartkob outside Pretoria, where they're being kept until the official handing over this evening. Gauteng Finance MEC Lebogang Maile says the expansion of roads has been identified as one of the key projects to stimulate economic growth in the province. And the former chief executive of Google says he fears that artificial intelligence could be misused to create biological weapons. A full update follows at the top of the hour with Greg Hose.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M2 westbound has a crash reported at Denver. The N3 northbound in Bedfordview is queuing on the link to the N12 east at Gilulis interchange. Albertina Sisulu Road in Besaidnout Valley has a crash reported near 5th Street, and on Dickers Road westbound in Florida Park has a crash reported at Golf Club Terrace. In KZN on the N2, some community unrest reported just west of Pongola, so you asked to expect delays. The N3 westbound has a crash at Cliffdale. The N3 eastbound has a stationary vehicle at Linfield Park. The N2 southbound has a stationary truck after Sabaya Drive exit. The N2 northbound queuing towards the M41 Gateway exit. The M7 westbound has a crash reported before Belleville Road exit, and the M4 southbound has a truck crash reported at the M7 highway. In Cape Town, the M3 Philip Gessana Drive outbound is slow moving towards Hospital Bend. The M5 southbound is slow moving towards Kromboom Road exit. The N7 Jakes Gerwel Drive southbound has a truck crash reported at Railway Bridge, and the N2 in Somerset West is slow moving at Onverwacht Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, it's the Nedbank knockouts, right? Go for it, to me.
Yeah, and Stellenbosch FC will be without the services of Carl Jurgens and Sihle Nduli when they meet Polokwane City in the Nedbank Cup last 16 tonight. The pair are out on suspension. Meanwhile, Rise and Shine have carried their impressive momentum from last season into the current campaign, with coach Phuti Mohafi leading them to third in the Betway Premiership after 17 matches at present, while a trophy would just top it all off for them. However, Stelli's coach Steve Barker says that they are a very effective side.
They seem to be a tight-knit sort of team, working hard for each other, and just taking the opportunities when they have been presented to them, and being quite difficult to break down. So we have played them in the league this season already. 1-1 game, which we had taken the lead with a really good goal. They got a set-piece deflected goal. So they are having a good season. It's again up to us, our home game, our own ambitions to ensure that we get past Polokwane City on Thursday and get ourselves into the quarterfinal.
Elsewhere, Robert Lewandowski will continue to don the Barcelona jersey next season after agreeing to a contract extension that will see him stay at the club until 2026. The clause was included, or there was a clause that was included, that if Lewandowski did not participate in 60% of the season's matches, they would rescind his contract. Lewandowski will be nearly 38 years old by the time that his new contract at Barcelona ends. He has 31 goals in 33 appearances this season while he is the joint top goal scorer in the 2024-25 Champions League with 9 strikes. Then in netball, former Spar Proteas assistant coach Dumisani Chauke says that more countries around the world need to play netball for it to become an Olympic sport. According to the Olympic Charter, one of the conditions for a sport to be accepted in the Games is that a women's sport must be widely practiced in no fewer than 40 countries on 3 continents. And Chauke says that she has seen some encouraging signs in the growth of the game since the World Cup on South African soil 2 years ago.
I think it's grown. Obviously, growth is subjective, and we all view it differently, but I think it's grown. The gap is slowly but surely narrowing between the top countries and the rest of the countries. I don't want to be too specific, but the margins are becoming smaller and smaller, which means, there are teams that are improving and there are teams that other teams are catching up to. And it's important to always challenge yourself, against the best to want to be competitive up on that level. So in my opinion, I think things are turning around.
Honestly, I think it's bizarre that netball is not included in the Olympics because it's recognized by the International Olympic Committee. Over 20 million players play netball. It doesn't make sense.
If netball doesn't get included, and if they choose paddle before that, please have a fight with me, because in the paddle industry, that's all people are talking about. Like, we need to get into the Olympic Games.
I know.
So please do your bit for netball.
Netball needs to get in there before paddle. But moving on to cricket, Rajat Patida was named as the new Royal Challengers Bengaluru captain for this year's Indian Premier League. Speculation was rife that former India captain Virat Kohli would return as the captain of the side that he led from the 2013 to 2021 season before du Plessis took over. Now, the RCB have released du Plessis, who has joined Delhi Capitals for this year's IPL beginning on the 21st of March. In tennis, Alexander Zverev moved into the last 8 of the Argentina Open by winning against Serbs Dusan Lajovic 6-4 and 6-4 at the Buenos Aires Lawn Tennis Club. Zverev needed an hour and 38 minutes to beat him in straight sets. Meanwhile, in golf, Rory McIlroy believes that Donald Trump is on the PGA Tour side in its ongoing dispute with rival tour Live Golf, having discussed the topic while playing golf with the U.S. president prior to his inauguration. He says that Trump told him that he did not like Live's 54-hole format. Now, Trump met with the PGA Tour Commissioner Jay and player director Adam Scott last week as the organizer seeks help in talks with Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, which funds Live Golf. And before I say goodbye, Ashraf, earlier on we were talking about SA20 and why there's not enough representation of players of color. Tabiso Musia actually has an opinion with regards to that. I think he is online. Tabiso, how are you?
Yes, no, I'm here. Good afternoon, guys.
Yeah.
Hello, Ashraf.
Yeah, wait, hold it. Is that
to your show every day?
I know you listen. Is that Tabiso Musia of SAFM, once of SAFM, now downstairs at Radio 2000, but you clearly can't get enough of us if you listen every day.
Which was out of my hands, by the way.
Oh,
put it out there so the listeners can stop asking me why I left. I was redeployed.
Oh, goodness. End of March is contract time.
Guys.
Listen, so what's your take on this? You heard us talking about it, right?
Yes, I heard you guys raise an interesting point about the SA20 and the lack of representation. And I agree with both of you. I think the lack of representation in the SA20 is a huge concern. And I actually agree with Tumi that there should be a transformation applied here. There should be the quota system should be applied here because it seems like it's intentional. Black players are just not getting an opportunity to play in this tournament. And I heard you say that obviously the owners are from India and they're coming here with their money and they basically want the winning teams. And I think there's a lot of that misconception out there that if you include a black player in the team, it means that they're going to weaken the team. And that's not the case. And that's not what transformation is about. Transformation is about giving deserving black players an opportunity to play. Because unfortunately for years and because of the history of our country, the system has been against black players. I'll make an example. In 1998, Herschel Gibbs was scoring runs in domestic cricket for Western Province, but he was being ignored by the national team selectors led by Peter Pollock. And that's when the quota system came into place for the first time. And Herschel Gibbs actually became the first player to basically play because of affirmative action. And I can even send you some of the articles at that time. The journalists at the time do agree that he was actually one of the best players in the country and he deserved his place in the national team, but he was not being picked until affirmative action selection came into place. And just to go back then to the SA20, it's not true that black players are not performing. If you look at the domestic CSA T20 competition, Ashraf, from last season alone, the top 5 wicket takers in that competition are black. There's a guy called Junaid Dawu. He was number 1. He doesn't have an SA20 contract, but he was the leading wicket taker in SA20. I'm not sure if he's Muslim or Indian, but for the sake of this competition, of this conversation, and because Cricket South Africa refers to them as black, we'll call him black. There was Malusi Siboto, there was Kwena Mapaka, Andile Simelane, and Mihlali Mpongwana. These are the top 5 wicket taker in the domestic CSA T20 competition. Only 2 of those guys got SA20 contracts. It was Andile Simelane as well as Kwena Mapaga. Andile Simelane only played 2 games in this SA20, despite being part of the Proteas team that had beaten Pakistan in the T20 series leading up to the SA20, but he was being sidelined. And there were other players that came from nowhere, white players that were playing ahead of him. And I don't want to mention names because it's not about black and white, and the players don't pick themselves. But it looks like the system is not fair, and that's why these laws need to come into place. So that even the...
So here's the point very quickly, right? So, I hear you. I may disagree with you about the point now to say that there may be a perception that black players don't perform. Goodness, if you're including black players from around the world, from Kagiso Rabada to you include all Indian players as black players, in the world of cricket, right? So I don't hear that, but I understand there can be perceptions in terms of whether people are familiar with certain names or they're not. But let's get back to South Africa, right? How then do we fix this thing, considering, and I don't know enough about it, that these teams are actually owned by foreign entities who actually make a bid like how you do Fantasy League, and they choose players, they come at a cost, and they buy and they don't buy at certain times. How do we do that and ensure this thing thrives and we bring in our own rules into it and they may not like it, for example? I don't know any better.
Yeah, I think we need to follow the law. Firstly, we are guided by laws in this country. It's in the Constitution. Equality is in the Constitution of this country. There are laws and regulations in the Constitution. That's why when Starlink wants to come here, and I make that example because everybody's talking about it, I'm not too invested in that, but they are told they must have a BEE partner. That is part of the laws of this country. Cricket South Africa, who is the custodian of the game here in South Africa, has the same laws and there's this quota system in their domestic cricket where they are saying there has to be a certain number of black players in the team. So even the SA20 that we are talking about has quotas, guys, and their quotas include
wait, hold it. You're saying it doesn't. You're saying SA20 in fact doesn't have quotas, and
it does.
Does it?
No, it does. But these are the quotas that it has. There's a quota that says each squad must have 8 international players, and at all times 4 of those international players must be in the starting 11. There's another quota that says that each squad must pick a rookie that is under 22 years and must be part of the squad and must be South Africans. So those are already quotas. So what's the difference then in saying that also each team must have a black African player? Because they already have quotas in place, which then negates the argument that they are putting the best 11 in the team. Because if your best 11 in a team from the Durban Super Giants is South African, you can't play that best 11 because the SA20 quota say that there must be 4 international players in that starting 11. Point taken. Even if they are out of 4.
So Thabiso, very quickly, because we need to move on. And I want to give to me the last word. What should be happening then is that when this deal was negotiated and renegotiated even now, right, that SA Cricket has got to get, or rather Cricket South Africa has got to get involved to say one of the many different quotas that already apply to this cricket league, which is a unique setup, is one of them is going to be around the local players that must come in, right? That's what you're suggesting to me. Your thoughts?
I fully agree. I did say it earlier on because I feel like it's unfortunate that now when they do it, it's going to look like now they're choosing players of color based on the law, as if we don't have the talented pool of players.
Yes, I think Cricket South Africa should put its foot down because ultimately they are the custodian. This tournament is happening in their own country. They've got their own laws. So they should tell these owners that we have these laws in South Africa because it's also in the Constitution, it's also in the law. And right now we're having people having an illegal gathering in our country. There's no other way to put it. And the unfortunate part of this is that the SA20 is changing lives because the contracts are lucrative. Players are being bought for 5, 6, 7 million rands. Unfortunately, the top performing black players are being denied an opportunity here to even change their life lives financially. So that's why we need transformation, because the best players are not getting the opportunities because of the color of their skin.
Okay, Tabiso, you've had your say. Your time quota is up, if you get my point, right? Thanks for raising it. I think it's an important one.
That's why I'm always listening.
I know you do.
I'm glad I was able to come on.
I really appreciate it. You've got our pulse rate moving in a certain direction. You know that, right? To me, you want to say goodbye, or we'll just have more sport in an hour's time?
In an hour's
time. Okay, perfect. There we are. Right. What do you guys think about what Thabiso Mosia has said? Yes, no, solutions. We want to know. This is the National Pulse.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
There's no crisis. Right, so just pick up on that point about the no crisis from Joburg Water. Do you then she consider there's a crisis because you're not getting water, but initially there was no crisis? Do you agree or not? 086 000 2032. Right, let's get to Makwe Masilela, the Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, good to connect as always. You've got local and global news in a moment, but let's start with results from British American Tobacco.
Afternoon to you and to your listeners. Yes, these guys, they want to become predominantly smokeless business in 10 years' time. They've added 3.6 million adult consumers to a total of 29.1 million to their smokeless products, which now account for 17.5% of the group revenue. But generally, the revenue for the business is down 5.2% because of the sale of their business in Russia and Belarus, and also foreign exchange headwinds. But their organic revenue is up 1.3%, driven by new categories revenue, which is 8.9% up, and their profits as headline earnings per share is down 72%, but their dividend growth is up to 2%. And Ashraf, the guys expected global tobacco volumes to fall by 2%. And yes, there's been optimism over the prospects of a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia, offsetting a jump in yields as hot inflation threatens to close the door to any rate cuts in the US this year. And bond traders pushed out bets for the next US rate cut to December. Global trade war fears persisted as Trump said he would impose a reciprocal tariff on every country that charges duties on the US. Locally, our December mining production fell by 2.4% after falling 0.9% in November. And markets are positive with Europe and JSE hitting fresh highs. Now the local bourse is flat, dragged mainly by financials. Oil fell as potential Ukraine peace deal may ease supply disruptions. Remember, Russia is the world's third largest oil producer. Basically, there's a change from supply concerns to sufficient supply. Brent crude is down 0.8% at $74 a barrel. Gold prices upbeat as dollar sinks amid Russia-Ukraine peace hopes and also benefiting from trade war jitters. We see the yellow metal is up 0.3% at 2,912, but platinum is flat and the rand is down 0.3% against the US dollar. Is now 18.59, 23.13 to the pound and 19.27 to the euro.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Makwe. We'll connect again tomorrow. By the way, tomorrow we've got a fascinating guest as part of the... Tomorrow is Friday, isn't it? Yeah. Friday Fireside Chat. Looking forward to that. Former politician, if I can call it that, maybe. I'll tell you a name just now. Let's get to your calls after this.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, let me get audience engagement. We need to get what your thoughts are on some of the biggest issues that we've got here. Right, I just want to see if I can connect with the callers. Now we'll do some of the WhatsApps. Let me play that. So there's some quick thoughts on the players, the conversation we just had.
Hi, SAFM. Do you guys actually have exact figures of what the teams are made up of? I'd be very interested to see what the squad is currently made up of in terms of black players from South Africa, internationals, etc. Thank you.
Thanks. Of course, I don't, because I didn't bring it up. Well, let me do this between Tumi and Thabiso Mosia. I'll ask them to provide all that information, maybe in the next day or so. Let's see if we can get it, because it'll be very, very interesting indeed. Of course, that issue about the water, no crisis, stunned.
Hi, Ashraf. While you are at Joburg Water, can you check with Mangaung local municipality for water in Vepenar? You know, Vepenar supplies Botshabelo and Bloemfontein with water, with raw water. but we never, as the residents of Wepener, we never get water because we have a dam there in Wepener that supplies Bloemfontein and Botshabelo. But us, we never get water. I don't know what's going on between Central Val Water and Mangaung local municipality. Can you follow through on that?
Okay. Again, I'll put it to Keys and Temba to say let's look at that issue, right?
Hey, how are you, the studio? Hey, this thing of water, it's causing chaos. It's problem. Even here in the Val, in Ferry and Acheng, there's no water. There's no water in Everton. There's no water in Sebokeng. There's no water like it. Not only Joburg. It's problem, man, this thing of water. I don't know what can I say. Vanderbilt Park, no water. Oh. Singayenzani manje ngaphandle kwamanzi Nkosi.
Well, I mean, you're right. It is so widespread. I mean, Mangaung on the one hand, I also heard about the Hammanskraal issue, the water. They had no water for a long time. I believe it got on, and I heard something, I think this morning on Tula's show, they said, like, actually, there's problems in that area again. So, we need to do a water watch of about 10 regions in the country. I'll get Keys and Temba to make a note of it to say, we need to highlight 10 regions, say, what's the problem across the board? It's a problem. And that, for me, is a crisis in whichever language you want to say. David in Peter Maritzburg, go for it.
Yes, thank you. No, but now I'm just concerned about the issue of racism at schools. And I don't know what is being done by the government. And I think this issue now must become a criminal matter. It does.
Sorry, what did you? We may have lost you.
Done to the victim.
David, you there? No.
Yeah, I'm here. Yes.
Yeah, I think we lost you for a sec. So you just repeat that last line again. What you said?
No, I'm saying there's nothing much that's being done when it comes to the issue of racism, because black kids are suffering racism, maybe on a daily basis, from these former Model C schools. And I think this matter now should be treated as a criminal matter. EFF, as the political party that is normally dealing with it, I think they must submit a motion in Parliament to say this matter must be treated like a criminal matter now.
Well, look, normally when these things happen, they get taken up. Human Rights Commission gets involved. I mean, I can't comment on the actual issue because we don't know, but if it's happening, and often enough you find that there's an investigation from the authorities and the Human Rights Commission. David, point made. Let's move on to Mandla in Cape Town. Hi, Mandla.
Yeah, Ashraf. On this thing of water, my daughter is studying in one of the universities there in Joburg. Last year she came and said, Daddy, there's no water there in Joburg. We have to go long distances to fetch water like they do in the villages. You know, when Ashraf, the Joburg water, they spend 1.5 billion rand on salaries and only 860 million rand on capital expenditure. So their core business is not to provide water. Their core business is to pay salary. That's what the ANC does everywhere in South Africa where they govern. Did you see how jubilant were the SAMU workers in Tshwane when Celia Spring was voted out? They were jubilant because they knew that Father Christmas is coming back. In Lichtenburg, in the northwest, they collapsed that municipality. The infrastructure collapsed. Clover had to close there. And people, they lost jobs because of the corruption of the ANC. And the best butchery was there in Lichtenburg. It had to close in Lichtenburg. Now the ANC there see that there's nothing there. They say the municipality must be dissolved in Lichtenburg and be joined to other municipalities. What is going to help? It's nothing that's going to help.
All right, Mandla, listen, you
road infrastructure has collapsed. It has collapsed. So I don't know why people vote for ANC. What did they hope for?
All right, Mandla, let's leave it at that. I can't talk about who they vote for and why they vote for them. That's their business. But I'll tell you what, you've raised very serious issues, but yet I'm laughing because, you know, they say on World Radio Day, radio is a theatre of the mind. When you said, when the people heard that Cilliers Brink was being deposed as the mayor, they were standing in the queue and laughing they were celebrating like it's Father Christmas. I couldn't help but I was trying to picture that scene of Father Christmas. It's like, oh my goodness. Yeah, we can have some humor amidst the very serious thing that happens in our world. It is the national pulse after all. Right, thanks for that, Mandla Buyizwa in Parktown. Go for it.
Yes, thanks, Ashraf. First of all, I want to speak about the whole racism, Trump and AfriForum story. But I want to just, commend the radio from my childhood in Soweto.
Okay,
before we're displaced by the system, and I had to grow up in so many countries in exile. And radio has been in the UK when I used to love I still love BBC World Radio Service. I still listen to it, even though I
okay, but I mean, I hear you. Did you want to make one point? Because I really need to move on for you as well.
It is so great for it's very informative more than TV, and it's not a time where they can move around with it. Even
I agree with you. I completely agree.
Yes. Lastly, on this racism story, I want to put the racism culture into the door of minorities, because they have a problem of wanting to align themselves with power. If they are not controlling anything, then they have a problem. And they lash at it to us, indigenous people, who don't have, that kind of system. They bring it here, they import it into South Africa.
Okay, I don't know what you mean by imported. I'm struggling to understand you.
Because where they come from, that's what they do. They oppress others, and it's like in their blood.
Okay.
So I think this whole thing of running to Trump and reporting things that are not happening, it is a culture. We cannot heal them unless they transform themselves.
Okay, got that point made. Vuyizwa in Parktown, transform yourself. Otherwise, you'll never get rid of that culture. Right, there's more comments, Ashraf, or in Tatigarda. Don't go, just Ashraf, man, not even the surname, right? Did you manage to contact Mwako Ramatlori regarding his appointment as the Bapedi Prime Minister? Something I know we raised. Let me find out more about it, because, we had the two sides to that story. Let's see if we can follow up on that. Thanks for that reminder. But there's more comments from you. And I need to pick up that. Here's one on sport.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. It's Mike here in Cape Town. Ashraf, I was also listening to your conversation with the guy, Tabiso. He was talking 100% correct. Whether you like it or not, it's 100%. There is segregation. There is segregation in certain type of sports. Look, they don't want black people. Either you've got a talent or what, they still segregate you. They will make sure you won't succeed. You won't go far in that sport. Only because they want white people or whatever. So I don't know how they're going to fix it. It seems like this is going far. Thank you.
All right, but you know what? I mean, you're also making statements, and we can't verify that. Just like Tabiso's point about the quota, I hear him rather, but also that also needs to be verified. What we don't know is, the point is, are people being deliberately not picked? I'm talking about now, 2025. Are they not picked at provincial level in this SA20 league because they're black players? Or are they not picked because they feel another player can do a better job? Which can happen. It's by its nature, it's completely subjective. And I don't know any better. And therefore, my question. Right, here's another one about the MK party.
Hi, Ashraf. It's James here. Ashraf, controversies. Those guys there who are putting in parliament there are not the guys who worked for controversies to get those seats. So they are entitled. Now they are fighting amongst each other there for those positions. Good for them.
Okay, there's more to come, right? We'll play some more sounds. Remember, after about 4:45, we'll take a lot more of your calls, audience engagement. You can WhatsApp, you can text, you can send us voice notes. You can also tweet it out, as some people do on the Twitter platform. Just SFM Radio, tag SFM Radio, and myself, Ashraf Garda. But right now it's 5 o'clock. It's time for the news with Greg Hoos.
Thank you, Ashraf. Families identify remains of slain SA soldiers and a warning over artificial intelligence. Good day to you. The families of the 14 South African soldiers who died in the eastern DRC 2 weeks ago have finally identified the remains of their loved ones. Their remains have arrived at Air Force Base Swartkop outside Pretoria, where they're being kept until the official handing over this evening. They were killed in a battle with the M23 rebels in the DRC. President Cyril Ramaphosa will later this evening lead the handover ceremony. National Defence Force chaplain Ernest Masweu explains how the proceedings will unfold.
Right now, the families are being prepared. They are going to be brought here. The president will be coming to join with other dignitaries, and we're expecting quite a number of people and religious leaders to join us. It's a handing over parade of the remains. So we are going to drill. The sergeant majors and all other members will do the drills that you will see where we are officially handing over the remains to the families. It will then mean the chief army is going to now make sure that each family is supported from today onwards until they do the burial.
Meanwhile, some Limpopo residents have called on the Ministers of Defence and International Relations respectively to ensure the safety of South African soldiers who are deployed to missions outside the country. 8 of the 14 fallen soldiers are from Limpopo. A community member in Khampashlele is Daniel Mswane.
It's unfortunate in a war or in a war there is no instrument to measure a killing or not a killing, but we believe they were there under instruction of UN and AU, so and also SADC. So it's unfortunate for our province and it's unfortunate for our community. It's unfortunate for ordinary citizens that we have lost their brothers and sisters in majority as Limpopians.
The Gauteng Finance MEC Lebogang Maile says the expansion of roads has been identified as one of the key projects to stimulate economic growth in the province. He addressed a business breakfast at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange ahead of the Gauteng Investment Conference set to be held in April.
While this might sound like an insurmountable target, we are confident in the investment potential of the province, as well as the existence and further development of the infrastructure that is necessary to convince the global and local investor community of our capacity.
The Transnet National Ports Authority signed 2 major terminal operator agreements that lead to the development of South Africa's first liquefied natural gas import terminal and a liquid bulk terminal at the port of Richards Bay in KwaZulu-Natal. The authority's Phyllis Stefeto.
These key projects were developed as we followed through what we call the Port Development Framework Plans. And through that, we have identified a need to develop major LNG terminal infrastructure. And that is not only for the Port of Richards Bay, but we have identified 3 ports, the Port of Umuga, the Port of Richards Bay, and the Port of Saldanha. The LNG terminal in Richards Bay will enable the construction of the gas to power for both the interested independent power producers and Eskom, as outlined in the South Africa's energy plans.
The former chief executive of Google says he fears that artificial intelligence could be misused to create biological weapons if terrorists or rogue states got hold of powerful AI models. He says it's important that governments understand what private firms are doing.
The truth is that AI and the future is largely going to be built by private companies. It has to do with the incentives and the money and where the talent is and how the world works. They're not going to be built in the equivalent of a Manhattan Project. So it's really important that governments understand what we're doing and keep their eye on us. We're not arguing that we should unilaterally be able to do these things without oversight. We think it should be regulated.
That was the former chief executive of Google, Eric Schmidt, speaking there. The families of the 14 South African soldiers who died in the eastern DRC 2 weeks ago have finally identified the remains of their loved ones. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khos.
And coming up in your sports this hour, Ackerman to lead Dolphins in One Day Cup, 2 changes to Blitzbox World Rugby Tournament squad, and Pakistan hopeful Champions Trophy will bring more big events. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M2 westbound has a crash reported at Denver. The N3 northbound in Germiston has a crash at Rand Airport interchange. Ondeckers Road westbound in Florida Park has a crash reported at Golf Club Terrace. And the N4 Witbank Highway eastbound in Pretoria has a crash reported before Watermeyer Street exit. In KZN, the N2 community unrest reported just west of Pongola, so expect delays. The M4 southbound has a truck crash reported at the M7 highway. The M7 is queuing at Recreation Road, and the M4 northbound, a crash reported near Bayard Road Bridge. In Cape Town, the M3 Philip Gesana Drive outbound, slow moving towards Hospital Bend. The M5 southbound is slow moving towards Krombum Road exit. And the N7 Jakes Hadwell Drive, a truck crash reported at Railway Bridge causing heavy delays, and the N1 outbound, slow moving towards Okavongo Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you.
In business, a rand saved is a rand earned. And almost 100,000 businesses trust OUTsurance.
We in the eye care industry, we're saving over 1,200 Rand a month. To all the business owners, you've got nothing to lose by giving OUTsurance a chance to quote on your business insurance. It's true to say that you always get something out with OUTsurance.
For your business insurance, contact OUTsurance to see how much your business could save. SMS quote to 43328 for immediate cover, or visit outsurance.co.za today. A licensed insurer in FSP. T's and C's online.
Jazz lovers, the wait is over. Africa's grandest gathering returns on the 25th to the 26th of April at the Cape Town International Convention Center. Experience 2 nights of soul-stirring jazz, electrifying collaborations, and over 30 world-class artists across 4 iconic stages. Don't miss this unforgettable musical experience. Get your tickets now at ticketmaster.co.za. Brought to you by Independent Media, proud media partner of the Cape Town International Jazz Festival.
Masandawana want to display their elite status with a graduation letter to the last 8. However, lower division team, Mpeni Home Defenders, are seeking to make history and join the league of giant killers. This is the Nedbank Cup Ross 16. Mamelodi Sundowns versus Mpeni Home Defenders on Sunday, 16 February at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1 and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the
game. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
So I'm looking at a quick text message, and text message says, "Come on, Ashraf, read my WhatsApp. You know it's the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth." I don't know what you mean by that. It almost like threatening. Read it, and you know it's the truth, almost suggesting that we're holding it back. Not at all. You know, we take calls, we take WhatsApp text messages, we take WhatsApp notes, we sometimes read tweets. All of that has to be balanced out with the time we've got, including the other guests. So we try really hard to cover as many as we do. And what we don't do is play them or not play them on the basis of what we personally feel about it. That I can assure you. Having said that, here's your point. Good day, Ashraf. The greatest problem with maintenance on essential services, water and electricity, is a shortage of human resources. It is a far greater priority for our corrupt government departments to pay a salary to have a fat KFC muncher in the office than to have 20 staff in the veld for the same salary as that one person. Right? You've made that point. I can't say I can prove it that it's a fact or not, but that's your opinion. Let's get on to another issue. Earlier on we chatted to the SABC News reporter Samkelo Maseko about the MK party. What's going on there? You've got Dr. John Slopy on the one hand, then you've got Mzwanile Manye on the other, then you've got the issue of Floyd Shivambu on the one hand, and then you've also got the issue of Duduzile Zuma. And all of that is just exploding into something that we don't quite understand. So let's get another take on the story and try to see what happens next with Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast, who's a political analyst. Dr. Breakfast, good to connect with you. Hi.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm going to play with your name. It looks like each one wants to have each other for breakfast, supper, and lunch. They're trying to eat each other up, or they eat their lunch up. I don't know where this is going to go. What do you make of what's happening with the MK party?
Well, I think it's a combination of factors, but at the heart of these problems is basically competition, in my view, over positions. I don't think that these differences have to do with the strategic direction of the party. I think they have to do with competition over power. And the party has done very well in terms of positioning itself in the body politic, and now the party seems to be affected by internal dynamics. Of late we saw the public spect between Floyd and Duduzile Zuma, and she apologized, even though I think she was just doing that because she doesn't want to be suspended because she didn't make mention of Floyd. But yesterday we heard about the other conflict that broke out between Mzwanele Manyi and Dr. Hlophe. So, I've always argued that the way out of the problems of the MK is to hold an elective conference so that the party can have its own leaders that are elected by the rank and file, as opposed to this special arrangement.
So maybe just pause on that. So in the absence of any, because it's a baby party. They've done well, but they're still infants, right? And they're running well before they even started walking. They've somehow been able to do that, right? Yeah. How? So let's talk about that in the absence of this electoral conference. When is that conference coming? So practically, what do they do now? How do appointments get made and people put into parliament and not?
That is everyone's guess. The decisions in the party, let's face it, they seem to rest with former President Zuma. Even in the constitution of the party, he is referred to as the president. So most of the decisions, they revolve around him. Of course, there is a task team that is given a mandate, to run with the, programs of the party. But up until you have an elective conference whereby people have elected, that is democracy after all, whereby people elect their own leaders, then you are able to crack the whip when it comes to issues of ill discipline. But at the moment, decisions are made by one person, brought down to the rank and file. Everyone is expected to abide by them. It's a mess. But most of these conflicts also, they revolve around Floyd. It appears to me as if he might have been good on matters of policy formulation as opposed to being a good administrator, because people are complaining about his administrative skills. But on the other hand, it might happen that there's a sabotage, because the guy just joined the party of late, and all of a sudden he's holding a very strategic position, and he was not there when the party was formed. But obviously, there is no way you would have jumped ship from the EFF to the MK party without having a carrot being a dangle.
Absolutely. I remember tweeting at that time, and maybe it's exactly to your point, right? I said Floyd Shivambu's move from the EFF to the MK party is the political transfer of the season. And that's exactly your point, that no way that political transfer would have taken place for Floyd Shivambu to go there and then be a backbencher. Something had to be promised to him, considering what he's given up to get to where he is. It's completely natural. The problem, of course, is then for the rank and file, maybe not so much the rank and file, even like Zuma's daughter, they don't seem to agree with that statement, that position.
No, of course, but also it shows that the deal that was struck, in my view, it must have been struck between Floyd and, number one, as opposed to Floyd and other people who are closer to him, who basically feel let down now by being overlooked over him. No wonder has been. For example, how do you blame Floyd for a speech that is poorly written? Come on. You can't put the blame on him. So you can see that there seems to be an onslaught against him so that he comes across to be this incompetent bureaucrat of the party.
So the question is, how do they save it if from a policy point they don't disagree? They may disagree with one or two strategies like every other political party, but then if this is fundamentally about positions, then how does, to pick up from what you said, how does number one sort this out?
Yeah, I mean, he has a mammoth task because, I mean, almost every now and then there are new issues, and that is going to affect how the party functions, because a healthy party is supposed to function as a unified force. So now, if you have threats which are coming from within the party and you have other threats that are coming outside the party, then the party is in trouble.
How? There's been comments from people, and there's been, and of course people are speculating, right? I'm talking about our audience here. And one of them is like, don't tell me this is going to be another COPE. That means there's a serious enough concern that the party, if it's unable to get its leadership and management in place, will implode in the same way that one can make that argument for a football or rugby team, but also in the same way you make an argument for a big business. If it's unable to manage itself effectively, it will implode. Is that far-fetched, or is that on the mark?
No, that is not far-fetched. The party will not implode. The party is falling apart. So the party has to respond to these problems if it doesn't want to be another failed COPE or another project gone wrong.
So outside of, just the last thing, outside of President Zuma on the one hand, and then what is seen as like the other faction from Duduzile Zuma and whoever supports her. So let's say Floyd Shivambu is now compromised, although he's the Secretary General. Is there another person who can come across as the peacemaker, as the statesperson, who's able to bring the party together and maybe even emerge from this thing with so much credit that even unintended, that person could well emerge as a future leader even above Floyd Shivambu?
Again, that person should not be anointed. That person should emerge organically from the structures or from the rank and file of the party. Soon as you anoint a person, then it becomes a problem, because the person has not been elected democratically. So this thing of anointing people, it seems to be the source of the problem, in my view. The party needs to allow democracy to flourish, so that people can accept their leaders. And then when people are out of line, then you crack the whip on matters of discipline.
I suppose maybe the last point, right or wrong, this party led by Jacob Zuma appears to be playing the rules of a very, very different game. The very fact, even tactically, that Zuma then saw it fit to be the leader of the one party while still on another party's membership and actually fighting in court to retain the membership of another party. I'm just making that point to say it just shows you we're dealing with a very, very complex issue here, isn't it?
Yes, of course. But also I think the party might have allowed maybe Msholozi to be the embodiment as a crowd puller. I mean, let's face it. I mean, had it not been for him, I don't think people would have voted for the party on a large scale. So his personality does attract votes to the party. But I think because elections are over now, the party needs to embed itself in the membership so that the membership can take ownership of the party and not revolve around a particular person. Because what happens if something happens to Zuma? Then what? The party dies a natural death?
Exactly. Let's leave it at that. Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast, political analyst, reflecting on issues around the MK party. Do you have any thoughts on the MK party? Not so much the problem, it exists, it's a fact, but the problem is like what happens next? What should be happening? Let's talk about baboons after this.
Hi, I'm Khomotso KG Mweketi, and I believe in music's ability to connect, to heal, to remind, and to bring joy. And each week on my Saturday and Sunday show Seasons right here on SAFM, I endeavor to do just that. So join the movement of Seasons every Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's addictive. You might invite a friend. Seasons, only on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide with me, KG Mweketi. Because where words fail, music speaks.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
I see Vic from Durban saying, Ashraf, to pick up Tabiso's views on the past and current shifts on transformation in cricket, South Africa, listen to Ashwell Prince's emotional story about his older brother, right? Okay, points made. I think the issue is not so much what's happened to cricket in the past, but where are we now with regard to cricket and that SA20 Cricket League? Okay, let's talk about baboons. You may know the story of Reagan, who was a baboon that was killed at a school in Delmas last week. Well, we now hear that this morning a second baboon spotted and captured on his way to Pretoria. So now there's a reward for information on what happened to Reagan and maybe questions about what has happened to these baboons on the loose. Samantha Stelly with me, Publicity and Communications Officer at the NSPCA. Appreciate your time, Samantha. Thanks for joining us here on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Right. Give us some context, firstly.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, say that again?
I was saying, give us some context in terms of what's actually happened.
Sure, no problem. So there was a male Chakma baboon. He was affectionately called Reagan, and the Owl Rescue Centre had been monitoring him for a number of days as he travelled through the Pretoria suburbs. They were hoping that he would move to a more natural area where he could find a troop to join. But unfortunately, he found himself at the school in Delmas, where he was treated very violently and killed as a result.
Okay, and then the second baboon now that we've found that was spotted and then captured?
So we're not, as the NSPCA, involved with tracking that baboon, but what I have seen on social media from the Owl Rescue Centre is that they have successfully tracked him and moved into a more natural location. So that's a positive end to that story.
Okay, so let's then stay with the Reagan story. You're saying, the baboon was violently killed. Do you have any idea what led up to that actual killing?
We're not 100% sure why he was killed. It seems from what we've garnered information from children at the school and community members that there was a bit of superstition involved. Previously that day, a number of children at the school had fainted, and then the appearance of the baboon drove people to believe that he was there as a result of witchcraft and somebody was going to put a curse on someone at the school. So our understanding is that the children and members of the community involved reacted out of fear of witchcraft.
Oh, I see. That's what happened. So but you don't have names, you don't have actual people, right? That's what you're saying, that you can identify at this point in time.
We unfortunately haven't identified the individuals responsible for this act. There are videos circulating, but we're unable to see their faces in the video, and the school is a bit reluctant to give us the names of those involved.
Okay, why are they reluctant?
We're not sure at the moment. The community is also very strongly protected. are protective of the individuals responsible and those seen in the video, and we have received some, I won't call them strong threats, but suggestions that we may be met with violence if we get more involved. But we have met with the school. There was no violence. They were just reluctant to tell us the names of the individuals. So we are going to pursue this case further.
All right. In the meantime, I see you've put out a reward now for any information regarding what actually happened to Reagan, right? So if people want to follow up, I mean, how do they contact you guys?
The best thing to do would to probably give us a call. So follow our social media platforms, because we will be updating everybody on the progress of the case. If you have any information or if you'd like to know more, you can give us a call on 011-907-3590.
Right, 011. Let's repeat it.
Sure, 011-907.
Yeah.
3590.
3590. Got that. Well, best wishes in your search, Samantha Stelly, Publicity and Communications Officer at the NSPCA. That's a really strange story of the baboon Reagan killed because of allegations of the baboon being the perpetrator, let's call it that, of witchcraft, and therefore needed to be get rid of, right? Right, we'll take your calls as well later on. We've got about a 15-minute run where there's lots of people wanting to talk about some of the biggest issues, including if you want to talk about World Radio Day. But I'm very interested, if you do, about what it means to you. But there are other issues that have developed. The Ukraine-Russia story, on the one hand, the issue of course, those South African Defence Force soldiers now having arrived home, I understand, and then to be buried, of course, and then the president responding in Parliament to some of the issues that have been raised post the SONA. Have I left anything out? The cricket story, there's a whole lot more. You're tuned in to the National Pulse.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
All right, so what we're going to do now is just play some of the clips, soundbites that is from President Ramaphosa. Remember, he's had a busy time responding today on a range of issues from people, right? So let's talk about that. One of them is his thoughts around a national dialogue.
South Africans, we have sat around the negotiating table and forged agreements under much more trying and fraught circumstances. The journey we are embarking upon now through the national dialogue will result in concrete processes to become a more united and stronger South Africa in the face of many political, social, and economic challenges that we face both globally and locally. The debate also saw the expression of divergent views on various matters, also by parties that make up the Government of National Unities. And sometimes these views were expressed quite robustly, and at times quite directly and harshly. It is expected that the 10 political parties that make up the Government of National Unity, with their very different perspectives and ideological views, will not always agree and will sometimes feel the need on platforms such as this to talk to their different constituencies. Now, despite these differences, these political parties are working well together in the Government of National Unity, whether people like it or not.
Okay, whether people like it or not. Then, of course, he repeated something which may well be, that will define his year. Remember that story about we will not be bullied?
And I'd like to repeat, we will also not be bullied by anyone in the country or outside. From our intent to work together. As a country, this is a moment of continuity and change. But it is also a moment of unity. Faced with the challenges that we now face even globally and continentally, this is the time when we must unite and speak as one and act as one, as a nation. It is a moment of continuity because we are building on the substantial advances that have been made over 30 years of democracy. And we are taking forward the far-reaching reforms that we embarked on in the previous administration. While some speakers have sought to claim the progress that is being made and the reforms that are now being implemented as new developments and their own makings, we nevertheless welcome the fact that they also embrace these initiatives and are working to ensure that they succeed. Whether they claim to be the mothers or the fathers of this, we are working.
And then, moving forward, he spoke about, well, it's been repeated by many presidents, but once again, the need to reiterate it, to be united as a nation.
Non-sexist. We want to live together in peace, harmony, and equality. We do want to see our country succeed and growing. We must not allow others to define us, but more importantly, to divide us. At a time like this, we need to stand united as a nation, particularly now when we are facing a harsh global wind. This is not the time for any of us to rush off to foreign lands to lay complaints about issues that we ourselves can solve here in this country. We need South
to try and solve problems that can be solved in our country. Make of that what you will. Let's get the news headlines. Here's Greg House.
Quick look at the headlines. President Ramaphosa says all members of the Heads of State Summit have agreed to resume direct talks and dialogue between all state parties as well as non-state parties, including the M23 rebels over the DRC conflict. The families of the 14 South African soldiers who died in the DRC 2 weeks ago have arrived at Air Force Base Swadkorp outside Pretoria to receive the mortal remains of their loved ones. And as the African Union prepares to elect new leaders, SADC has decided to support a candidate from Madagascar, here testing for AU Commission chairperson. That's SAFM News for now. I'll be back at the top of the hour with a full news update.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N12 eastbound in Bedfordview has a crash near Edenville Road exit. Albertina Sisulu Road in Besaidnout Valley has a crash reported near 5th Street. In Midrand, the N1 northbound queuing towards Samrand Road and the N1 southbound slow moving towards Olifantsfontein Road. In KZN, the M4 southbound has a truck crash reported at the M7 highway. The M7 is queuing at Recreation Road. The N2 southbound has a stationary truck reported after Sabaya Drive exit. In the Eastern Cape, on the R63 protest action just east of Fort Beaufort in Cape Town, Voortrekker Road has heavy traffic at the N7 checks Havel Drive crossing. Main Road is slow moving through Rondebosch and Victoria Road outbound slow moving through Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right after the conversations we had earlier on with Thabiso Mosia, once of SAFM, it's the case of we have to talk about cricket now. Go ahead once again to me.
Yeah, we are starting with cricket where the Hollywood Dolphins have announced Marquez Ackerman as their captain in the One Day Cup. Ackerman is now no stranger to leading the Dolphins as he was captain of the side that won the CSA 4-day domestic series a few seasons ago. Meanwhile, SA20 Commissioner Graham Smith says that there is an intention to add more teams in the league, most importantly, expanding it into other provinces.
Obviously, I did feel, I guess the swell in sentiment of growing and adding new teams. Those are, I guess, areas where, with Cricket South Africa, you need to sit down and think about, how that looks into the future. As you say, which areas, are the best. We do get approached by franchises to be involved in Betway SA20, but for the first 5 seasons there was a commitment made that we wouldn't. I think obviously just just a few areas that you need to consider is, you need to add another 30 South African players at least to the league. And, one thing that we want to maintain all the time is the strength of the cricket. So you need to assess, whether there's like another outstanding 30 players in the league. I think, growing the player base, creating competition amongst players, improving, the standards of the game is something that's important. And then you obviously need to look at, how you can make, wherever the franchises go, make it commercially viable for them as well.
Well, then moving on to rugby, the Springbok Sevens have made 2 changes to their 13-man squad for the Vancouver tournament of the World Rugby 7 Series next weekend. Sebastian Job is back in the squad for the first time in almost 2 years, and he comes in to replace injured Zane Davids, while Tristan Lates returns in place of Devalt Human. In football, Amajimbos have been drawn alongside Burkina Faso, Unifac 1 and Egypt in Group B at the 2025 Total Energies Under-17 Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco from the 30th of March to the 19th of April. A record 10 African nations from the tournament will qualify for the 48-team FIFA Under-17 World Cup that will be staged in Qatar from the 5th to the 27th of November. Meanwhile, Stellenbosch FC will be without the services of Carl Jurgens and Sihle Nduli when they meet Polokwane City in the Nedbank Cup last 16 tonight. The pair are out on suspension. Meanwhile, Rise and Shine have carried the impressive momentum from last season into the current campaign, with coach Puti Muhafi leading them to 3rd in the Betway Premiership after 17 matches at present, while a trophy would just top it all off. And Stelli's coach Steve Barker describes them as a very effective team.
They seem to be a tight-knit sort of team, working hard for each other, and just taking the opportunities when they have been presented to them, and being quite difficult to break down. So we have played them in the league this season already. 1-1 game, which we had taken the lead with a really good goal. They got a set-piece deflected goal. So they are having a good season. But it's again up to us, our home game, our own ambitions to ensure that we get past Polokwane City on Thursday and get ourselves into the quarterfinal.
Elsewhere, Liverpool manager Arne Slot has to wait to discover the extent of his ban after he was sent off amid scenes at the end of yesterday's Merseyside derby. The Premier League announced Slot had been hit with a 2-match ban for his sending off at Goodison, but the statement has now been deleted, and it's understood that it was a mistake, and the league has 3 days to charge Slot, and they are yet to review the referee's report and decide what action to take. Finally, in motorsport, 6-time Spanish world champion Marc Marquez set the fastest lap today in the second of the 2 days of pre-season testing in Thailand with 1 minute 28.855 seconds. Marquez came out tops ahead of his brother Alex Marquez, who clocked 1 minute 29.034, and Italian Marco Bezzecchi with 1 minute 29 seconds. The Thai Grand Prix will kick off the longest season in MotoGP history with 22 races on the schedule. Well, that's it. It is a wrap from my side.
22 races are going to tie each other in knots for the Thai Grand Prix. Okay, I've said it. Right, you have a good night. You better say your goodbyes.
Righty.
Is there any sport tonight?
Come again?
Any sport tonight?
Yes, Nedbank Cup.
Oh, yeah, you did say so. Yeah, the knockout. Yeah, okay. All right, got that. Supersport yesterday qualified already. Got that one, right? Okay, tomorrow then. Yeah.
Righty.
Specsavers now looks after your hearing as well as your vision with Specsavers Audiology. With 60 stores and counting, we are South Africa's largest audiology group. For a limited time only, buy 1 rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. You heard right. Buy 1 rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. Find your nearest store at specsavers.co.za. Specsavers Audiology. Test your hearing and join the conversation. T's and C's apply.
The Yellow Guys have a top-class plan to play elite rugby to remain in the top 5. But second-place Giants, the Red and Blacks are undoubtedly chasing the first position. This is the top 14. Clermont-Auvergne collides with Stade Toulousain on Sunday, 16 February at 10 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Unless Jimmy's got some water news, let's get to the economic stories of life anyway. Jimmy Maya hosts the SAFM Market Update, of course, from 6 to 7. Set the scene with us, Jimmy. What's moving markets?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. I wish I had good news on the water situation. It's been very inconsistent in Johannesburg, but the markets have been more consistent than that, and that says something on a Thursday as well. We're going to be taking a look at a couple of things on the show. We're going to be looking at the JSE's call to citizens. There seems to be about 4.5 billion rand in unclaimed dividends that might be out there for citizens that would have invested in shares or that would be holding shares that might not know that they're entitled to a dividend. So there might be some money out there for all of us. 4.5 billion rand is quite a large sum. So we're going to speak to the JSE, try and understand how they are dealing with this. They've got a new initiative to help people identify whether or not they're entitled to dividends and how to claim that dividend. And then we've got a conversation with the latest South African gin company to be acquired by Pernod Ricard. I'm referring to Inverroche, of course. They've just concluded a deal to be acquired as part of a bigger company, and we're going to be speaking to the managing director of Inverroche around that and trying to get a sense of what that means for the South African gin maker and what that means for putting that gin on the global stage. Then we've got a conversation with Standard Bank about how to not let love cost you a fortune. It is Valentine's Day tomorrow, and they want us to take a look at the concept of romance scams. They seem to be picking up. They seem to be all the rage all the time, and we're going to be looking at that and trying to figure out how to not fall victim to that. And then, because it's Thursday, we've got an SME. We're going to wrap up the show with a special SME called Biomedical Emporium. The founder of the business joins me in studio to take a look at their products. They actually are in the skincare and beauty market segment, and they create medical grade products. So there's a lot of science that goes into the products that they create, and they'll be bringing some of those products into studio so we can take a look at them. Before we get to all of that, the markets have had a weirdish kind of day, depending on which markets you're looking at. Resources having a really good day, but let's start with international markets. International equity markets were pretty much a bit of a mixed bag. Asian markets, the Hong Kong and Shanghai indexes were down, or indices rather were down. The Nikkei was up about 1.2%. The ASX in Sydney was basically flat, up about 6 basis points. The DAX and CAC 40 in Germany and France respectively, they had bolster days, both more than 1.5% each in terms of gains, whilst the FTSE was down 0.2%. The Nasdaq is up 0.2% at the moment, while the S&P is up about 0.4%. Our own local markets had sort of a muted performance compared to the other markets. Industrials up 7 basis points, financials down 0.2%, but resources up 0.3%. As a result, the all share down about 0.1%, and the top 40 down about 0.1%. But I did say that commodities were leading the charge, and if you look at the platinum and palladium pricing, the biggest gainer on the day by far, back above $1,000 an ounce. Platinum holding steady at $1,045 an ounce. Brent crude below $75, only marginally so at $74.57 a barrel. Gold price up 0.3% at $2,919 an ounce again. We're back above $2,900 there. The rand a little stronger against the US dollar, but it was a little weaker. So it was about 18.57 before you and I got on the phone. Now it's at about 18.51. The pound against the rand, so 1 British pound will cost you 23 rand 17 cents, 1 euro 19 rand 31 cents, 1 Australian dollar 11 rand 65. Anyone looking at Bitcoin, $96,000 a Bitcoin, or around 1.77 million. Hasn't moved much from yesterday in terms of the rand value of that, but if in terms of the dollar value, it is up about 0.3%. We're going to be looking at some of these movements and seeing how we wrap up the week, but we'll be doing that a little later around 6 o'clock. For now, Ashraf, back to you.
Okay, perfect. You have a great show, 6 to 7, with Jimmy Moyaha talking about the markets and economics of the world. Thanks for that. Right, let's engage with you. You're the audience. Let's talk after this.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Okay, we'll get to some WhatsApps in a moment, as well as some of your comments. In fact, what I'll do is let me start with the voice notes. There's lots of comments, interestingly, about the cricket story that we touched on.
Hi, Ashraf. What Thabiso is saying is clear and precise. So there's nothing to confirm. We all know the laws of South Africa to correct the injustices. So, including yourself, you know that. So there's no stats to be confirmed. And if black players are not playing, these companies need to force. In fact, SA Cricket needs to champion that. It's their project. They need to, if somebody comes in this country, must align with how we do things here. You can't allow people to come and do as they please. It's totally not on. Thabiso is right. Thanks.
Okay, got that. Of course, I don't know what the terms of agreements are. And it's not like black players are not playing. The question is, not enough black players are playing. That's really the point that was made, right? Here's another.
Hi, Ashraf. At the end of the day, CSA and your Rugby South Africa and all of those have totally put transformation on the back burner. Thabiso is 100% right about what he's saying, about everything that is going on with regard to the T20, with the SA20. So what it comes down to, as long as the black African child doesn't see itself out there on the pitch and doing those things, it's very difficult for them to become passionate about those things. So these sports will remain exclusionary until such things change. But as long as people like Mark Boucher and Graham Smith are still in control of certain areas, we will never see the transformation we need to. Thank you, Ibrahim Cape Town.
Okay, I think you said Ibrahim. Look, certainly there has been a high level of transformation. I think the question is whether there's been enough. And that's also playing out at stadiums. I see that, by the way. I was at the game on, was it Saturday, the finals, yeah?
Good morning, good night, Sasas. Good night to our listeners. It's Steve Manier here, Sasas. I disagree with Mem there for saying that they're gonna get the people who killed the baboon and arrest them and open a case. I disagree. I totally disagree. What if that baboon took out a child's eye? Will the baboon have been arrested? I feel that they did the right thing. Immediately come in that manner to the school. We have to protect our children with whatever we can against animals. Thank you.
Call that, was the animal actually an absolute threat to the learners? That's the question, isn't it?
Just that. So join them.
Hi, good afternoon, Asha, and a good show, my man. Yo, at MK Gupta party, is terrible. It's terrible indeed. So it's a shame those who support MK Guptas. It's not the party that can put South Africans forward. Just look what they're doing. Yo, I feel shame to them.
I wonder if others agree with your description. You said it like twice or thrice maybe. MK Gupta party. I'm sure we're going to get a response. Right, more calls from you.
The Buccaneers want to demonstrate that they are the reigning champions and nothing will stop them from marching on to the quarterfinals. Meanwhile, Bakaga have a different game plan to return to Hampatele with happy faces. This is the Nedbank Cup Last 16. Orlando Pirates FC tackles Baroka FC. This Saturday, 15 February at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. The whispers in the morning as I look in your
This February, the month of love and self-care, at SAFM we're celebrating with you, spreading love to all. Let's embrace kindness, connection and self-care. And as always, SAFM will continue leading the conversations that move us through love, wellness and everything in between. This month, let's love ourselves, love each other and keep the conversation going. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
'Cause I'm your lady, and you are my
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAFM.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
So here's a comment. The DA lost high-powered leaders almost at the same time, namely Trollip, Mashabane, Dr. Palazzi, Midvar Mayor, Maimani, the man who wanted the 4 metros yet to the SABC. That was not an implosion and falling apart, but renewal. This is how impartial and independents are defined by the SABC. I really don't know who you're referring to here, and I really don't know what you're talking about. I'm really struggling to understand the reason for you saying this now, today, on this show, after we're talking about the MK party. I'm just failing to understand it. Okay, Salo in Mokopane. We do have Salo, right? Salo, go for it. Hello.
Thank you, Ashraf, for taking my call.
Thank you.
Ashraf, this day of Radio Day, it reminds me, I'm going to quote a couple of guys.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite lady of the radio, this is Sakina Kawendo, Robert Marawa. I can go on and on. I just want to mention also a couple of callers that we used to engage.
Okay.
Do you remember there was Mr. Hope Papu? I think the Hope Papu is the ANC guy.
Yes, he was involved in health. Yes.
Where is he now? I don't know.
There was a Hope who called in this morning on one of the shows. Maybe it's the same person. I don't know.
The host pop, there was another old man. I have come in touch with him. He called himself Chamba from Alexander.
Yes.
Way back, you know him. Yeah. Unfortunately enough, I met with that old man. He's a very intelligent man.
Is that
and
so?
Wow. And yes, and the other thing that I like about them, they listen to me when I'm on radio. They will call my uncle to say, I will listen to.
Okay, so you have impact, yeah.
Yeah, I have impact, and then I didn't know about that. So we and the likes of Bra Eddie from Endonendal, I think it's French.
Oudendaal's Rus, yeah.
Oh,
I know.
We talk so much, Ashraf. The radio. You will think that people who are on radio, the people that
they become chummies, man. Yeah. There was that guy, complete right winger. I can't remember his name. Who used to call in when Tim Modise was on, and he would.
Peter. It's not Peter.
I don't know if it was Peter. It was some other name. And he even came to the studio to take photos one day, like complete, like in a Eugene Teblans type of uniform. But he came to take his photos. Yeah.
So I have, I don't sleep. My radio is on 24/7. I can't sleep if the radio. Like that's the truth.
Really?
It must just have to be on. Then I will sleep. If it's not on, I will just wake up and then just switch it on so that I can sleep better. But then radio, it is so important to me, Ashraf, because it contacted me. I've known a couple of guys that I've never met, and then some we just talk on via the phone, and then some we met, and then we have a good engagement, a good relationship. It's like a family to me.
I think we must have a listener, an audience meeting just for the audience.
I think so.
All the guys, all the chommies, like 10,000 people in one stadium. Can we fill FNB Stadium or something like that? Let's see what happens.
Ashraf, what do you think about this proposal? when we close off during December times,
Yeah.
and then we have that kind, because I proposed this, I think, a couple of times.
Is it?
Maybe you can attend to it. Just look at it.
Well, I'm not a minister. I can't redeploy people.
No,
Yeah.
no. It's just a suggestion, the way that you and I are doing.
Okay.
Maybe we go there in the SABC big arena, and then we talk to each other. We see. I love to meet Mike. I like Mike from Cape Town.
Okay,
I
well,
just want
Mike
to
from
meet Mike
Newlands,
one
yeah.
day.
All right.
Oh, and the last one.
Yeah.
Oh, the intelligent man, but he's partially blind.
Yeah.
Very intelligent man. I was supposed to meet him. He stay in Port Elizabeth or somewhere, Cape Town. His
Yeah.
name is Ngonde. Oh man, that man is so intelligent. He is out of this world.
Okay. Listen, I have to go. Thank you for that. And I hope your family and all your chommies have been listening to you, talking to us now, because they're going to say, hey, you know who's Sello from Mokopane? They're going to talk about you like a legend as well. And I hope they do. Thanks for that. Lovely call. Really enjoyed that, actually. Impo in Randfontein. Hello.
Hello, my brother.
Yeah.
Hello,
I'm good, man. Go for it.
well, quickly, man, the guy who has just made a good point, but let me go to where I phoned you.
Mm-hmm.
Two issues that I want to raise. I mentioned that the African Forum has taken the government to America for complaints. I've realized that there's been a rise of racial comments, and I don't know how you feel as a representative. How do you absorb this thing? I take you are white, and I also want to say we should not take all white people to be bad. And yeah, I think we should be able to relate better and say what Cyril was saying today. Let's bring the country of all of us. And let's not allow people to drag us to
All right, yeah. Okay. Impo, your line's getting worse. I got that. Thank you for that. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, you raise an important point, okay? I don't know. I think even since I've come back to SFM in April of last year, the discourse, but not just on this station, you can go to other stations around things defined by race clearly are there all the time. And sometimes you get mook of it, but the reality is it's there and you have to manage it because we want to reflect the national pulse. So you can't tell people not to think what they're thinking, okay? Of course, we moderate the conversations around that. And how do I manage it? Well, we just try and be as fair as possible. I mean, in terms of, yes, we're getting different types of callers. We had some fascinating Afrikaner people yesterday. In terms of me, well, I mean, I need to say, you said you must be white. Now, I'm not white. I actually come from an Asian background, so Muslim Asian background. But I identify in terms of politically, have always been identified as black, and I can't think of myself as any other way. So that means that struggle was our struggle. Absolutely, no question about that. And that prism is still how I see things in life, even when we talk about transformation issues as well. Here's another one. Alfred Khadebe saying, Ashraf, MK party needs leadership, not opportunists. MKP left out the initiators and the creators and lean towards the careerists and the opportunists. Well, we'll see what happens next after that, okay? Let's see if I've got time to play a few more of the voice notes, because there's been a lot of that. Someone asking, what happened to Peter Wiley? I remember Peter Wiley. He called in every single day, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it? Absolutely did, right? Here's another comment.
Hi, Ashraf. My comment on the water is, you get what you vote for. For years and years, people have kept on voting the ANC cadres back into power. And these incompetent people that they put into place there is that is the result of what you're seeing now. These guys haven't planned ahead, have frankly looted and stolen the money that should have been used to renew the infrastructure in the city. They haven't accounted for the increase in the population, and this is the net result now. You have no water. So it's the ANC that you've got to blame for this. They need to take accountability for what's happened. And I don't know how it's going to be put right, but somebody has to do something, I would suppose. Thanks, Mike Kabeja.
Thanks for that, Mike. Well, I'll tell you what, I don't know whether I agree with you about it only being the ANC. I will say this much, and I've said it before. The ANC, as the party that's dominated our government for 30 years, must take its major responsibility in terms of where we are on a range of issues. That they must do. But in terms of this one, even in Joburg, let's talk Joburg in particular, the ANC is not the only party that's run that city. I mean, just recently the DA were involved in that. So there's been changes in the last few years, rapidly so. And I think the water problem didn't start this week. It's been going on for a good few years. Yes, it's now been exacerbated. That I agree with you. But overall, you are right. When you get a spokesperson from Joburg Water saying, this is not a crisis, then that is a crisis. Absolutely. Here's the last call I can play.
Good afternoon, Ashraf and the listeners. This is Sabata from Durban. Ashraf, I was looking at the by-elections results in Durban. I see that the IFP were the biggest winners in those by-elections. But if you scrutinize those results carefully, you can see that the ANC and MK's support put together, they slightly beat the IFP. They would have beat the IFP. But unfortunately, because there was a split in the ANC, now the IFP is gaining. So I think this is the picture that is going to happen in KZN in the local government in 2026. Thank you.
Okay, I certainly noticed that massive swing to the IFP and how poorly the MK party performed. Okay, but let's put it on pause. Our time is up, and as with any other radio show, we are governed by time. Thank you for being a part of it on the World Radio Day. We'll have another maybe audience engagement tomorrow on some of the other issues. We have a fascinating guest coming up tomorrow from 5 to 6. But right now it's 6 o'clock. Greg Host is here with the news.
Thank you again, Ashraf. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday evening. An agreement to hold talks over the DRC conflict and families arrived